What is up? Good morning, crypto in the morning. We have a special show today. We have some awesome guests coming in, and we've got some cool topics that we're going to cover. One of them is going to be from the RH stream the other day, information related to a video that I did that RH was actually talking about in terms of there being sell pressure on Pulse. So we're going to get some opinions on that. We're going to also take a look at cryptocurrency in general. I found some interesting data, macro level data that I want to share. It is pretty astonishing. Once you see this data, you're going to be blown away and also understand that we are at the edge of a massive adoption phase in crypto, and we're so early. Like I have goosebumps right now because how incredibly early we are. We're going to talk about Dandelion Plus Plus, which is a protocol for anonymity, and I think that might be kind of interesting, as well as what are some strategies? Like, what are some strategies that we could utilize, whether we're new or somebody's trying to get yield today or somebody's trying to plan for the future or how to think about that. So we're going to talk about that as well. But if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, you guys better be pressing that like button and the subscribe button and the share button. So also you can give a flex in the chat below. Peace.
Young folks, you tripping on them motherfucker.
Richard Heart. Richard Heart.
Bought my hex from the fucking start. Point one every day we mark. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Checking my MetaMask moving. Look at the hex, he is mooning. Looking at why they be choosing. Peter is why they be losing. Pull chains out and they'll get me a check. He's gas up and it got me a mess. Remember the times he died collect. Hex I been eating, I'm dying in the best. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Getting this back like a year ago. Getting this post, I ain't letting go. Swerving the ring like a Lambo. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Bought my hex from the fucking start. Sacrificing all this bread like I'm Richard Hart. Got paid on big payday and I had a hairy start. Now I'm checking on my pulse just to check my heart. Richard Hart. Richard Hart. Richard Hart. Richard Hart.
What's up, everybody? Let's bring in a special guest today. He has some really keen insights, also a very analytical mind. So let's bring in Orca. What's good, brother? How you doing?
Hey y'all, how you doing, man? I'm doing awesome. This that song just gets me going, even in the morning.
Right? We got to bring that dude on sometime. Whoever put that song together, just be like, hey, man, right? That would be fun.
Oh yeah. I don't know if you can see me in the green room. I was throwing up signs and everything, man. I was jamming.
I should record that afterwards for everybody who's here supporting. Thank you for the support. GRC is out today. He had some hemorrhoids or some other stuff he had to take care of, and he should be back at the top of the hour potentially. So when that happens, I'll let you guys know. And if he wants to share what he was doing, he can do that. So what's up, brother? It's been a little bit of time since I've seen you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm excited to get to hang out and chat because this is kind of the show that gets my brain going and gets me crypto oriented for the day. So it's nice always to come on and hang out with you guys.
Are you going to be doing the fitness challenge? Are you guys going to be doing the fitness challenge in the comments? Are you guys going to be doing that? I'm curious.
So okay. I'm not. I appreciate the shout out for the beard, man. It's amazing what you can do when you stop grooming yourself. It's not like it's impressive. It just grows like this. But I'm doing the fitness challenge, but I'm not in the cool club because I'm too ashamed of how I've let my body slide. So rather than showing you guys all the flubber in a private picture group message and have that blackmail for the rest of my life, I'm just gonna do it on the sidelines and support everybody cheering loud.
Hell yeah. So today we've got some awesome stuff I want to cover. If you guys want to learn more about the fitness challenge, we're going to do 90 days. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a leaderboard. We're going to do all this cool stuff. I'm talking to a sponsor later today, potentially. We're going to do highlights every Sunday. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a ton of fun. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you tune in on Sunday at 11 EST because we're going to be covering that. So Orca, I wanted to play a video on a clip from Richard Hart the other day because we had chatted on my channel about, I think, how there's going to be selling pressure on Pulse, or maybe I did a video and you commented on Twitter. And when you provide, well, I'll play the clip and then we'll talk about it and I'll kind of like expand upon what he says, because I was listening to this clip the other day and I was like, oh, damn, he's literally talking about what I did the video on, confirming what I was saying with more detail. So let me pull that clip up and then I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you bet.
Share this with you guys. And also, anybody.
Most recent stream.
What's that? Yes.
Okay.
And anybody who's in the comments, feel free to ask questions. Remember, Orca's been in this game for a little while, and we're happy to answer questions. Remember, we've got about maybe a month, maybe 2 months before shit is actually going to be going live. So if you guys have questions related to that stuff, I've got one super basic question that I'm going to ask him in a moment after this video. So let's share this. And hopefully you guys can hear this. I don't know if I can hear this, at least with GRC when he was doing this. So here we go.
When PulseX tokens are burned, whose tokens exactly are getting burned? It's a great question. So the V2 address in the Uniswap V2 code, which is forked to create the PulseX contracts, scrapes a percentage of fees, 21.7% of fees. And those fees, when you do a swap, are paid in the form of the token that you're getting rid of. So if you were to swap, say, Pulse for Hex, then the contract would scrape some of the Pulse. And if you were to swap Hex for Pulse, it would scrape some of the Hex. Then when someone adds or removes liquidity to that Hex Pulse pair, as part of their add or remove function, that person pays to send the scraped tokens to the Fee2 address. And so the Fee2 address acquires over time, as people add and remove liquidity from the LP, 21.7% of the fees, and the fees are whichever pair was gotten rid of to get the other side of the pair. And so the tokens that are being burnt, and so what happens is now anyone can run a contract, which then uses those scraped Fee2 address paid fee percentages, and then buys Pulse X with those, so the inputs are the scraped fees from those other coins, and then it trades them for Pulse X, and then those Pulse X are burnt. So the same thing that allows them to do the trade also burns them. So that's it. So the input energy to buy the Pulse X to then burn it comes from the scraped fees from trades in the Pulse X exchange.
So I'm going to give a second to just kind of like walk through that to see, hopefully, if everybody understood what was happening there. And then I want to hear your thoughts on that. So I talked about this in depth in a video. There's going to be selling pressure on Pulse from Pulse X, right? You have a 25% burn fees on Pulse. On Pulse X, there's 21.7 buy and burn. There's a difference between just burning and buying and burning, because the fee is paid in Pulse on Pulse, meaning you have a fee paid in Pulse and you just take 25% of that fee and you just burn it and you're good. Right? On Pulse X, you have fees that are going to be generated in the pairs, right? So if you're an LP, you're providing hex and pulse, an example that he was just talking about, and you're going from hex to pulse, then your fee is going to be paid, your 0.29% fee is going to be paid in hex. Of that 0.29%, 21.7% is going to be scraped and put into an address that sits there and just collects those fees. When LP is added or removed from the LP pool, then that is when a function can be run that allows those, whatever fees are earned, to be sold and swapped for Pulse X to burn that. Now, to lay this out, I don't know the numbers, and I'm going to have a video out more in depth on this later, guys. So if you want to check that out on my channel, make sure you subscribe. It's just youtube.com/Stolt, I think, or there should be a link down below. Well, and please, Orca, correct me if I'm wrong on this assumption portion of it, because this is definitely an assumption. Whenever you guys are thinking about these things, always think about what you could be doing wrong in the way you're thinking about something. So if you're running through some type of logic in your mind, think about what assumptions that logic is implying by you saying these types of things. So if you say that this is the case, then what assumptions are there that could fuck up your argument? In this case, if you have Pulse X, you would assume that there's going to be more pairs, there's going to be more LP pairs between Pulse and another token than there is going to be between Pulse X and another token. Would that be an accurate assumption for you guys in the comments? And for Orca, is that an accurate assumption? So say there's 10,000 LP pairs, different PRCs, right? There's going to ERC bridges in, right? All that kind of stuff. Would it be an accurate assumption that there's going to be more Pulse to another thing than there is going to be from Pulse X to another thing?
I hear what you're saying. I think that makes sense. There's a chance that like the difference between the number of pairs that are with Pulse and the number of pairs that are with Pulse X, the difference might be negligible. I think Pulse X will be paired with a lot of things that, at least like in the immediacy, remember that not all of these tokens are going to be highly sought after or bring over their communities and stuff. So you're dealing with a very select kind of like sample size, or like population, I guess in this case, of tokens that'll really matter. So you'll probably almost have the same number of pairs, but to your deeper point in terms of does it cause a selling pressure on Pulse, and I assume you're talking about because of the routing of where the scraped fees eventually convert into Pulse X, it's possibly routing through PLS. I think that'll be interesting to see. It's something where in the immediate term, when we have very small, relatively speaking, we have very small activity on the network, I think it will be the case that some of that swapping has to be routed through Pulse Chain coins. I don't think it'll have a huge dampening effect, though, especially considering how limited the growth potential for price appreciation on Pulse Chain is right out of the gate, unless people just choose to seek premium pricing on something there's plenty of it to swap and trade for. And then as the network matures, I don't think it becomes a situation that matters because the liquidity becomes more sophisticated, more established, thicker. And so whatever routing you're doing is going to have yet again a less, like a dampened effect compared to what it could have at the most extremes, where maybe there's only like 3 pairs in existence.
Do you think, on the counterpoint to that, right? Because Hexacat says that buying pressure will, and the fee will outweigh any sell by a lot. So the counter to this could be that, right? And to what you were saying, and I'm just putting this out there because I want to have the dialogue with people in the chat and yourself. When you look at the fee structure on Pulse X, it's a percentage, right? 0.29% of a dollar value. Right, so if you're transferring $1 million,
0.29% of the volume of the token being swapped.
Right, so that's going to be, if there's 10,000 tokens, it's going to be 0.29% of that, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for the clarification. So that number, from a USD standpoint, on Pulse X, is going to be significantly larger than a fraction of a penny transaction mainnet for Pulse. So I agree that there's going to be a tremendous amount of buying pressure. I'm not saying that's the case at all, because I completely agree with that. But when you look at the magnitude of the difference, you have a fraction of a penny that as a transaction fee on Pulse. Say it's a tenth of a penny, right? 0.001. Then you take 25% of 0.001, so it's 0.00025, I think, or something like that.
Sure.
And then that is burned versus on a 10,000 unit, like say if it was equivalent to $10,000, the burn and buy function on Pulse X is like $6 worth that goes to buy and burn. And you're like, wow, 0.0025 burn over here, buy and burn over here, $6, right? So if you figure if 20% of that is Pulse that needs to be sold for Pulse X, right? That 20% of $6 is what? $1.20. So $1.20 is substantially greater than a fraction of a penny. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think you nailed it. I mean, this is one of the, it's the only time I've ever made a price call, as meaningless as it is, right? I'm not an oracle, but as meaningless as it is, I made a price call that I think Pulse X would outperform Pulse Chain from a relative to the US dollar, just because it is, one of the key issues with Ethereum is that, and we know this, it's the issue with Bitcoin, right? That proof of work conundrum that leads to the gas fees. Well, that's because you're paying the gas fees in that native coin of the blockchain. And so there's a question or a conversation to be had about, should the gas coin of a blockchain, should that be a store of value? Is it okay to have it play both those roles? Because in the case of Ethereum, if you store value in ETH, right, and the price is going up 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, even if GUI fees stay at 30, 40, 50, the dollar value of those fees is increasing. So what became an effective store of value becomes an ineffective gas token, right? So there's something to be said about, is it better if my gas token doesn't fly to the moon, if it's not designed to pump as quickly as some of the alternative investments on the chain? Because that just creates a culture of scaling that's able to handle more transactions for the average user or the lower end user.
Interesting. So
I'm happy with it not. I was just gonna cap it off with saying I'm personally okay with it not being designed to create a huge USD value per coin, because I want the transactions to be cheap. And if we have alternatives like Pulse X and Hex on the Ethereum network that we can bridge over and things like that, there's a lot of store of value plays to be made and a lot of passive income plays to be made. So not having Pulse Chain as an immediate and significant revenue driver doesn't throw me off at all.
You'd mentioned the way Ethereum set up with proof of work and the fees, can you explain that? Because you sounded like, right, so ETH and pretty much every platform from my understanding, or every chain from my understanding, is that you have a base layer, that layer one token. That layer one also is what you use to pay the fees. So if you're basing the fees off of layer one and layer one is increasing and it's a percentage or some derivative of that, then the fees will increase as the price appreciates, right? So is that kind of like where you were going with that, or was there something more in depth when you were talking about the proof of work related to Ethereum?
No, I mean, you nailed it. We could drill in, and this isn't just proof of work related, but that's why Richard talks about things like throughput, right? Because the capacity to service a set number of transactions per block in the blockchain, that creates scarcity in the form of limited number of transactions. And so people compete and they bid more in gas tokens to make sure that their transactions are structured within the next block, to see if that can incentivize the miners or the validators to process their transaction in the next batch. So that does create upward price pressure on Ethereum, because people can go out and they're like, hey, I'm going to just buy it more ETH so I can throw it into this gas fee and get that over with. That's usually, because of proof of work, that happened much faster than what I would expect to see on Pulse Chain. It's why you don't see that typically on proof of stake networks, is because that's the point, is to offload that immediate computing power required per transaction. And so there's less overhead per transaction, which means the amount that I'm willing to pay in premium to compete to be involved in the next transaction decreases, because I understand that it only stands to serve as more profit to you, and that creates this equilibrium in the market of how much fee is acceptable, what is the going rate of swapping or buying or whatever, minting an NFT. And those are socially enforced prices, right? That's like true market efficiency. So I'm okay with any mechanisms that delay the bidding to the highest dollar who gets transactions.
It seems like there could be, and I don't know this, right? But it seems like there might be a better way of doing that, where it's, maybe there's like a base layer ETH or PLS token, but there's a different way to measure fees, or doing something. Good morning, Lo. Where maybe the fees are paid in the tokens of whatever is taking place. So say liquid loans, say you're doing a transaction on liquid loans, then the fee is paid in their loan token or their USDL token, or if it's on another protocol that's coming out, right, then it's paid in that fee. And then on the back end of Pulse, those are like swapped through PulseX, because then that would also add to the success and volume on PulseX, right? Is that, I don't know, have you seen things like that? Why is PLS a good place? Let's see here. Where is this one? Why is PLS a good place to divert sell pressure for all PLS pumping? Can you talk about that? Or I don't
Sure. Yeah, I think what they're saying is because it's not designed to be necessarily a dead set pumpamental pulse chain, that you would prefer it handle whatever sell pressure routing might exist, as opposed to like your Hex or your PulseX or whatever tokens that you prefer to use as sort of your investment. I think the idea here is that the network will succeed if people choose to use it, right? So Richard's number one goal is onboarding, and then the number two goal is improvement. So that means that we can't get to number two until we do number one. So onboarding people will intrinsically determine the success of the network. And that means that it's a long-term game. Nobody's going to experience a 10,000x if the network doesn't adopt users. Nobody's going to experience a 100x if we don't adopt users. So there's something to be said about wanting Pulse Chain to be accessible to everybody all the time for as long as possible, because that incentivizes, or at least it scales in the entry to the ecosystem, where then you might need more money to go and buy a particular coin, but at least you can afford to get into the network. Right now, it's hard just to even participate in Ethereum, right? It's hard to even say, well, I want to buy $50 or something. It's like, well, I hope you meant $5 worth of something after that fee. So,
because the fees are absolutely ridiculous. It's interesting you mentioned adoption, because I found some very interesting macro data that I want to show you. But first, everybody who is watching, we have about 62 people watching between GRC and my channel, and we have about 50 likes between both channels. So
gotta hit the likes, man.
Yeah, you gotta hit those likes, and then press the share button. So you press the share button. And then you take that share button and you press it to Twitter or share it to a friend, because we're going to be covering some really good stuff today. So appreciate you guys. Okay, so let me share this with you because this is super fascinating.
Sure.
This is Google Trends, so I'll preface it really quick.
Nice.
Google Trends, the largest search engine in the world, and YouTube, the second largest search engine in the world. So you know about like marketing, like search engine marketing, right, where it's intent based. Well, I use it for research all the time. Oh, look at this. This is for Orca. Is it possible to compare sushi, cake, uni starting prices with PLS starting price? I struggle to compare that sort of initial reaction, by the way.
Between them, I think.
Between them. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and answer that question, because I didn't.
So I'll probably need to actually draft up some numbers to give you something to tangibly look at. But so the name here, Fur Primal, what you're going to want to really look at is not necessarily the starting price, because I'm assuming you sacrificed for PulseX. So with Uniswap, the sacrifice price for them, right? I think they referred to it as an ICO back then, but their offering was something in the range of 4 cents to 16 cents per coin. And then their lowest price, I think, was something closer to like 20 cents or something like that. So they didn't ever have an opportunity where they fell below their sacrifice opportunity. So that starting price, that doesn't necessarily mean the real gains, right? They experienced better gains than whatever the starting price was. So in order to do that, what I would do to do the math is to convert the sacrifice price of, say, Uniswap. I know you're asking for sushi and stuff like that, but just take these others as an example here, because I've looked up the sacrifice price for Uni. That's why I'm bringing that up. So you take that sacrifice price and then compare it to the all-time high, figure out how many X's that is, and then you just have to convert that into the difference between your sacrifice price and the percentage of the starting price. So for Uni, if the sacrifice was 16 cents and then the starting price is 20 cents, you would take the proportion of that difference and apply it to your Pulse X. And you know that you sacrificed presumably at about a thousandth of a penny. So then you take the difference between sacrifice price and starting price, and then you multiply it by the number of X's of the all-time high based off of the growth of the one you're comparing it to.
So
that'll give you the.
You're trying to like basically take the ICO price of, say, Uni for this example, and say it was $100 for 10,000 tokens, right, or something like that, and then convert that over to PLSX, and then get an idea of what somebody's returns could be, or the number of tokens increase, or something like that.
And I think, like when the thing that's interesting about PulseX is that this is going to launch at the same time as the chain. So that wasn't the case with Sushi. That wasn't the case with Pancake. That wasn't the case with Sunday Swap. These protocols were built after, right? And they were built by different teams than the people that made the layer one. So there's less synergy there than there is with PulseX and the Pulse Chain ecosystem. And there's also probably a little more opportunity for the people that were in the know. But that's such a hindsight call because it required adoption for them to reach those numbers. So
question on like Sushi, Cake, and Uni, right? Or any other swap. Uni is like independent of ETH, right? Like obviously it's for ETH, but it's not like by the team. Is that right? Is there any of them where they were put together? Like Cake is on BNB, right, or something like that. But was it developed by the team at BNB, or was it an independent team?
Independent team. Now they might have, not all devs are always docs, so there might be some crossover talent. But this is like the first time that we know explicitly that there's a cohesion of brand and development. And that's why I went on my rant, months ago about the incentive token, was because this is an unprecedented opportunity to build Pumpamentals in a way that the ecosystem, is reflexive and beneficial within itself, because that's not something that Uniswap can't buy and burn Ethereum. If they do, they have to buy and burn something else and swap it into Ethereum and then burn that. And then there's no financial incentive to their team because their team didn't get minted a shitload of Ethereum for starting Uniswap. So there's no alignment.
So Sushi, Cake, and Uni, they all have their own tokens, but there's no. Do you know if there's buy and burn functions in any of those?
Some of them, yeah. I think Sushi has a buy and burn. I believe Bancor has a buy and burn. But the thing is, they use these buy and burns as like a secondary deterrent for a Dumpamental that they've already programmed into it. Because if you look at something like Cake, it mints its own new cake. And then they have to play this difficult game of throttling what they call the emission rate. How much of it do we mint?
So you got inflation. You got inflation happening, and then you have probably selling pressure because of inflation happening in some degree.
Yeah, and then you're trying to buy and burn against that, and it's those are the games that trick a lot of people because you try to logically progress through how that value proposition plays out. But the markets are far more dynamic than that, and there are strategies that will wreck you if you think that everybody's operating on this like, oh, a logical progression is how people invest. It's not true. Just saying that something inflates at a decreasing rate. That's the Pumpamental behind Bitcoin. It inflates, but it inflates at a decreasing rate. That wasn't discussed in the white paper. So nobody gets to tell me that that's why they think Bitcoin has done as well as it has. That wasn't the point. The point was to be peer-to-peer cash. So if you're going to say here's your opportunity, here's all the X's. You have to just be honest about what's going on. And some of these other swaps, because they don't have that intrinsic alignment, there's some things they can't control. There's some functions they can't give you. There's benefits they can't offer because they don't have enough of the internal source of whatever that coin is.
The vertical integration between Pulse and PulseX, right? Like I follow Tesla, I've said this many times, right? For 10 plus years. Vertical integration gives you more flexibility with the UI, UX from a price standpoint because of some of the things you're talking about. This is going to be interesting. I think that there is the potential. I think there's the potential for something we can call it L2 or something, not built on top of something, to potentially be bigger than the L1 for the first time. But remember, I'm very new and there could be plenty of other things I don't see. But when I'm looking into this, I'm like, fuck, this is some really good shit. Like,
yeah, it's special. It's special, and people don't need to worry about. I hear a lot of people panicking because when Pulse Chain Sacrifice dropped, those of us that were aware of it, people were FOMOing in really hard, buying really big bags, and then Pulse X came out, and at first nobody was like that crazy about it. Obviously, they follow for the Richard Hart effect, right? So it's like I'm crazy about it because he's behind it, and that's a good pump of metal. But in terms of we didn't have all these details yet. We didn't know all the mechanics yet. And as those trickled in, people became much more bullish on that. And some people even became so bullish that they said, did I bite off more than I can chew with Pulse Chain? And I really want Pulse X. You don't hear stuff like that with other chains. And a lot of that is because of the timing. If a chain begins and then months or years later, the swap comes into play, well, then presumably I've made X's and X's and X's over here. So that's one reason I might jump into the swap if it's a brand new project. But that doesn't hold nearly the confidence of the L1, right? I have the L1 that's operating every day. So if you have that benefit of the confidence that's intertwined through that vertical integration, it's just such a peace of mind value proposition where that's why I'm putting the pressure on Richard, softly, because they're doing the hard work. It's easy to couch coach or whatever, armchair coach. But I think that this is like hey, we need to seize this opportunity because never before have we seen the opportunity to put an L1 out with a DEX on it and have them be symbiotic from the jump. So let's maximize that. Wherever we feel there's an extra token that needs to plug and play somewhere, let's keep in mind how these two benefit one another to begin with and just continue to build on that. Because I don't see any reason to copy other projects with what Richard refers to commonly as like duct taped on tokens. Like, well, then don't do that.
Correct.
We have the opportunity not to.
When you really go through the idea of buy and burn. So say it only takes place when there is LP taken or added to a pool, right? So I read the Uniswap V2 white paper and they talked about it there, right? Because he said it was a copy of that. So it's like, let me read this paper. And if you think about the success of Uniswap or the success of PancakeSwap or the success of SushiSwap, and if you are inclined to believe that PulseX has a modicum of that success, right? Those are like $1.3 billion in a 24-hour period on Uniswap, or $400 million on PancakeSwap, or $800 million on Sushi, or something thereabouts, right? Like that creates a tremendous amount of fees. And if you have PulseX as a percentage that is going to be sold down, well, then think about what happens again, right? So say, for example, there's $1 million there's $20 million of fees, and $1 million of the fees is Pulse that needs to be swapped into PulseX. Well, think about the pair that's going to go through, because we have two things to look at, right? We have the PLS, PLS pair, PLSX, PLS pair. This side is going in, this side's coming out. So there's selling pressure and then buying pressure. So that's obviously super bullish for PulseX and driving down the price over here. We also understand adoption could easily fucking outweigh this by 1,000x, 100%, right? That's not what we're talking about. But what does that do? So say if there's $1 million that goes through here, and then they pay another 0.29%, then another 21.7% of the $1 million is earned as another fee of Pulse that is going to be sold against it again, which is like, you know what I mean? Like, because you play that sequence out, it's going to happen over and over and over again. Like where it creates more and more buying pressure on Pulse X. So I don't know. This is gonna be super interesting
It will
to watch this play out.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong if Pulse Chain does actually pump harder than Pulse X, and then I go, oh, I guess the layer 1 is better. But like if I had to be the contrarian that had to pick a time that a secondary utility was going to outperform at L1, this is the only time I've ever had any semblance of confidence that could happen.
Ooh, that's interesting, guys. Orca has been doing this a lot longer than I have, and this is the first time that he said that there's any level of even a modicum of, almost dropped my food in my mouth, a small amount of confidence that the DEX or something built on top of layer 1 could have the potential to outperform. That's interesting because you have a tremendous amount more experience than I do. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this question from Dean DK, trying to grasp. Could you explain how PLS sell pressure could occur? For example, there's also going to be sell pressure on Hex too. Hex traded for Pulse. If the buy burn fee scraped from Hex side. Okay, cool. You want to take this one? I don't want to.
Sure, and then you can feel free to hop in too, because no chance that I'm going to get this 100% right. But that was actually something I was going to bring up, is just to keep in mind that in some cases people will want to acquire more Pulse Chain. And in some circumstances, depending on your relationship in terms of how much you bring to the table, whether you're a validator or not, there could be an argument to be made about acquiring an enormous Pulse Chain position and being able to accrue a pretty substantial profit sharing. And maybe that when you account for adoption down the road, maybe that is a tremendous opportunity beyond just the X's that you could buy and hold on Pulse X. I don't know. It's just a thought. But that is a good point, is Pulse Chain is the only thing that's insulated from the sell pressure of Pulse Chain when you buy into it. So it's able to benefit from all these other tokens that maybe aren't serving as store of value. Maybe they're speculative trading investments. Maybe they're utility tokens that don't serve a whole bunch of utility outside of swapping into something else. And a lot of people, I think, will want to always have enough Pulse Chain to be able to do transactions in the future, things like that. So I think whatever you're losing in sell pressure because of people using a DEX and some of that's routing through Pulse Chain, I think you're still going to have plenty of buying pressure on Pulse Chain to offset that. A lot of people will, anything on the open market that's cheap and, first 6 months of Pulse Chain, people are going to scoop that up.
And to put this into perspective, like we're talking about one piece of Pulse Chain. Remember that just assume there might be 10, 20, 40, 60 pieces of things built on top of Pulse, and all of those things are going to have transactions, right? Those things are going to have transactions in Pulse, maybe in the tens of thousands, maybe in the hundreds of thousands of transactions, maybe in the millions of transactions. So if you take a look at those transactions, that's also going to be 25% of those transactions that is going to be burnt just for Pulse. So we're looking at one piece here to put it in perspective, not to say that at least I don't think this, and I don't think you think this. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that Pulse is going to not perform very well. When you look at the nuance between Pulse X and Pulse, I think that there's some interesting things I don't see other people talking about. So I wanted to talk about that. But when we talk about adoption, getting back to Google Trends, right? So Google, largest search engine in the world. YouTube, second largest search engine in the world. And we know about intent-based marketing. Remember, that's how Google got so big, because people were giving them money to get in front of people who were searching for shit that they wanted to sell, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when I pull this up, it's going to be fascinating, because we're on the very, very, very beginning, early stages of crypto adoption. And the adoption here is going to be massive, because check these numbers out here. And then I have one more number to show you. So this is I just put in crypto, right? Because that's the
Of
most
course,
broad term. This is over worldwide, 2004 to present, and web search, right? So this is Google search. Look at this. This is virtually, so these are a percentage of the total peak. So this would be at 100% right here at this peak where the mouse is, right?
Okay.
And then everything else is relative to that peak.
Looks a lot like the Bitcoin price chart.
This is going to be massive. You know when this started to turn up? Right at the beginning of COVID, at like 2 months before
Right.
COVID.
And what does that really tell us, Sam? That tells us that people are looking for money, right? Like they're hurting. People are hurting. You don't go looking for crypto. I mean, unless the world, like given the state of the economy, if we were in all-time highs and everyone was full employment, getting raises every day, and then people are investing in crypto, you'd love to see that too. But this is kind of the other side of that coin where people are hurting. The markets aren't treating them well. Their retirements aren't looking great. Most people aren't securing pensions. And so where do you go? You go to crypto.
Yes. This is, I think you hit the nail right in the head because so many people are just trying to get out of like that tyrannical reach of like the government, what they're trying to.
And that stimulus check, ironically, was like the fuel for most people to speculate with. I think more Robinhood accounts were begun during the week of the federal stimulus check than they had accomplished in like the previous 2 or 3 quarters combined. And you look at where the majority of that money, the stimulus checks that were allegedly sent out for, buying your critical needs like food, shelter, and et cetera, they clearly went to flat screen TVs and crypto. I mean, we could see it on the transactions of all these stores, and people were not seeing $1,400 or whatever the difference is with kids and stuff. They didn't see that as this will save me. They saw this as, here's my one free ticket to try and go gamble on my future and hopefully come out on top because my alternatives aren't looking so good.
Yes. So this is now on YouTube over the last 5 years, right? We have this uptick right in the end of 2020 going into 2021. A massive increase in, wait, what was that? Was that what happened in Canada? Right? This is the end of 2020, this is the end of 2020 was picking up. So, wow, that's interesting. This is like the government tells you that you're a little BA and you're not allowed to do anything right throughout 2020. Right. And then everybody at the end of 2020 is like, F this. And they start transitioning. These search volume are worldwide and the 2 largest search engines in the planet, guys. This has not shown up in the price charts yet. This is people's education. This is people searching to learn and to educate themselves and find sources of information because DeFi, crypto, hacks, Pulse hacks, right? This stuff people got to learn about. It's not like you can just be like, hey, go to the grocery store and buy this stuff and have anybody grasp the understanding of it. It's like it's like talking to a brick wall when you try to like tell somebody about, right?
It's kind of bizarre. So I have experience working with the World Trade Committee, and one of our points of emphasis is to investigate opportunities for blockchain adoption in the African continent. And you'd be surprised at how many people around the world have been like, they know what they need. They know what they need out of crypto. They might not know crypto itself, but they know that their money doesn't work, that their legal systems don't work, that their property rights don't exist. And they're looking for some sort of censorship resistant alternative. And so when we have conversations with people from like Nairobi and things like that, we talk about what is important to you and how can we adopt blockchain technology to fit those needs. And you hear a lot of things with regard to obviously like human autonomy, things that we value, freedom of speech, freedom of movement is important to everybody. But then you hear things like, hey, I need legal recourse because a militia can just show up and steal my farm. Or, hey, I need to have money that doesn't inflate by the time I take it from the bank back to the farm or back to the village. I need actual hard money. And so those are all opportunities, but Ethereum can't bring that to the world. You're not going to get anyone in Nairobi to pay $50 to swap their $13 pay. It doesn't make any sense. We've been having a lot of discussions about how Pulse Chain could scale into countries of lower income, or we should really refer to them as countries with less stable economies, which is sort of laughable because even the premier economies of the world right now don't look very stable. So They're just the fringe folks on the economic line. And I think Pulse Chain is going to be the first blockchain that has enough economic incentive for people who are already in crypto to create a critical mass that attracts all of these in need populations that can really thrive with blockchain being adopted in their broken systems.
And we like this Hexacap the learning curve is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. It will be easier in time though. We're so early. I agree. Like I'm adding to that obviously, but we are so early. If you are feeling FOMO, if you're feeling like you missed out, like take a deep breath, do some fucking meditation, and realize that you are so far ahead of everybody else. So I've been in like the type of like, analysis, like learning, growing, but I was putting that block of attention of my time on Tesla and understanding that in 2010,
You're way up today. I don't know if you're long or if you just do it.
But this is what I saw. This is so similar. It's the same idea with crypto, with Tesla. We are so incredibly early to this game. And
dude, you're telling me I was researching Nikola Tesla, right? Like I'm on board with all the free energy ideas and the greenest energy, and then it's like I'm just hearing everyone now start hugging on to Elon, and it's like, you know who he named that company after, right? Like
so this I want to highlight this one question here. Most of the legacy finance friends are clueless with crypto, and they are supposed to be the ones with all the certs and degrees. 100%. So I have an MBA in finance and accounting. I have a CFA, which is like a CPA for finance, but it's a lot more challenging than a CPA. A CMT, which is like what people call a TA, right? But there's like a designation you can get for that shit if you want to. And I talk to friends, so I have friends in the industry, like in New York and stuff, who work at like, hedge fund or PE type firms, and they're fucking, they kind of slightly know about crypto, but they're so clueless. Like tomorrow, I'm talking with somebody who's probably got $500,000 with Bitcoin, and that's all he's got. He just keeps acquiring Bitcoin.
Sure, because that's what all the other rich guys on Twitter tell him to do.
And he's good. He's good.
For more Bitcoin.
And he made like he's good. He's like happy. He's making money and everything. But it's like, bro, there's so much more. I agree. The CFA is definitely challenging. I failed that. So I want to highlight this question too, because and then I want to show you one more chart, which we'll pull up in a moment. Crypto will allow you to print local currency, passive income, remove the weights of worry about the value of your earned income being less and less. Real crypto has just begun. So this is from Hex Phantom. But think about this. So I'm going to look at this from the CBDCs or whatever it is, like
CBDC.
CBDCs. Thank you.
You bet.
Think about what real crypto is, and then think about like the digital dollar, digital yuan. Now, if I did a tweet about this yesterday. If I were to be like, Hex, work on it. Hey, there's this new coin coming out, right? And we won't call it the digital dollar, but it has the same characteristics of the digital yuan or the digital dollar. I'll be like, yeah, they have the admin keys, right? Oh, they can also freeze your shit, and they can change the code whenever they want, right? Like you should buy it, bro. It's a good thing. No, you'd be like, Sam, you're a fucking moron. This is a scam, a rug pull waiting to happen. And these governments are just printing, like they're gonna make, if the real crypto world, if a coin came out like a digital dollar, digital yuan, it would literally just be called, a scam. People like, don't buy that shit. Yeah. It's a rug pull waiting to happen. Like that is the worst design for a cryptocurrency, like, right?
Yeah. That's the thing is, so I try to, because I've done way too many hallucinogens to pretend like the thoughts that I have don't project and manifest in reality. So I try not to get like into a boogeyman scare. I try not to think about will CBDC become this like digital tyrant that's able to enslave humanity. I try to look at what can we as the crypto community do to, one, insulate our own machines so that if the worst came to worst and they refused to become educated, we could still operate within an insulated environment. But I think that there's something to be said about progress. I don't know if you noticed, but 30 years ago we weren't in covered wagons. And I don't think in 30 years we're going to be in covered wagons again. It's just not the historical trend. So we tend to see technology evolve and humanity evolve. And even though we might be in like a paradigm shift where governments are more powerful than ever, technology allows for faster communication than ever, I don't think that that alone is indicative of a future where we're enslaved by the CBDC. So what I would like to see is a CBDC that focuses on managing their own house, getting their own house in order. Show me that you can put your budget on the blockchain. Show me that you're not spending trillions of dollars in digital currency on projects that we don't have any public disclosure of, these dark projects, if you will. So there's so many things that blockchain could do to immediately trim the fat or expose fat that we could then look at trimming in the current monetary budgets that we put together. I would like to see that addressed. Before we talk about, can it stop what I buy? Can it go up, go down? I don't want to even begin talking about that until we say, here's how transparent all of the transactions by the public sector are.
So that's a beautiful way of looking at it, and I think a very accurate way of looking at it. So if I'm understanding this correctly, you're like, okay, we've got 1.0 USD, right? And that's crap. And it is there's a very little level of transparency from an honesty standpoint, from an integrity standpoint, from people not doing nefarious things is a good thing, right? Increasing transparency. So you're saying going to the digital dollar is 2.0, and 2.0, yes, we have all these things where they have admin keys, all this other trash where they can do all these bad things, but it could be substantially better from the standpoint that everything done in the public sector is now in the open, so that people get to actually see what's happening.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to fight with both hands tied behind our back, right? It shouldn't be inflation punching me in the mouth while spending that I don't even know exists. I just have to assume it's there because some activist journalists have taken the time to track payments that don't belong where they're going for exorbitant amounts of money that nobody really knows the source of. And so ultimately you have to come to grips with, there are movements in money that I don't know of, and they are having a negative effect on me. So the transparency is the key for me. Otherwise you're getting beat up in two different directions, and you don't even have a voice in the conversation, because I just sound like a conspiracy theorist if I say, well, there's a bunch of money going to a bunch of projects that you don't keep on your books. They'll go, well, here's our books. Where's that money? And good point. So you need to have transparency to even be able to begin having that conversation.
100%. I want to let everybody know that I appreciate you guys in the comments. This is awesome. Thank you for the insights you guys are providing and the support. We see a bunch of support for Orca in the comments as well. If you're here, if you're enjoying what we're talking about, if you're enjoying the content, if you want to continue on this journey, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video, so that also helps out the channel, so we can bring this type of content to more people. Right? And if you want to, if you're getting value, take a second, share this on Twitter, right? You can give me a follow. GRC is not here, so I'm trying to catch up to Orca, and I'm trying to surpass GRC on Twitter. So I appreciate the support. There's a link down below if you want to follow on Twitter and say what's good. I'm very active on Twitter.
Yeah, man, your Twitter feed's good.
Thank you. So another interesting thing that I want to pull up is, I'll give you a preview of this. So I do a lot of research in the medical arena, right? I read research papers, right? I don't know if you can tell or not.
Yeah, you put it to work though. I just have it up here.
And I will pull up research papers because I find it fascinating. It's like going to kind of like the source of information, and then you can see how that might apply to like human researchers or people like me who will do it, and then we'll do blood work and see how the effect is, right? Yeah. And the site that I use is like PubMed or NCBI to pull up the medical papers, and then I try to like use that, and then if they have the full paper there, cool. If not, then I try to like go on Google to see if I can find the full paper, right? Mm-hmm. And when I was just recently, we can talk about this in a moment, the Dandelion++, but in the process of finding Dandelion++, which is a lightweight protocol that's like built to increase anonymity at the network layer, I came across something in the data that haven't really seen before in the medical front. So this is PubMed, right? And they give you this cool, if I zoom in, it makes it like go away, I think. Yeah, so I have to keep it like this. But you can see this graph, the graph over here, right? We have back in the day, and then we just see this like, exponential growth. And we get to see that 2022 has 16 already published research papers. These could be meta-analysis or something along those lines. The only time I've ever seen an exponential curve when I have been researching a topic is stem cells, because stem cells is a very broad topic that can apply. Stem cells can apply to anything, right? Mm-hmm. And when we look at crypto, this is fascinating, because when we go back and we take a look at this, remember, this is in the United States, right? But if we go here to the global, we see this giant uptick here, right? And then when we take a look at where the researchers, where the colleges, where the universities, is public funding getting dumped into this, and there's a massive at the corporate level, like these are universities, institutions. This is I don't know how global it is, but I definitely find research outside of the United States is probably US.
It'll be in major markets, right? Like major health markets like Israel and things like that.
This is going to be massive. Like the adoption, guys, we're so early. If this exponential curve continues, think about where we're at in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Massive adoption. And just gets me excited, because there's like so much opportunity that's on the table, and yet people today are just like, oh my God, I'm late. Like, right, you've been in this for so long. I'm like, go ahead.
Before we touch on this comics, it's a really good one. The page that you were on, I was trying to brief some of the metadata there, and it looks like a lot of it is to do with they're looking to improve the security infrastructure of their medical, and so by combining already existing technology with blockchain, they're hoping to add, it sounded like, just from the brief that I could look in there. So we know how big security is in crypto, and obviously when you think about the things most important to your health, like being alive, you probably do want to have privacy and security with that data. So that's cool to see.
So are you serious? I love the name. Is it possible for Rockefellers, of the world to screw up Hex if they dump a bunch of fiat into crypto? Well, that's actually going to help Hex, right? You could just go ahead. You can talk about that. I'm going to set up the next thing where you talk about that, because that's, by the way, all-time high for today was 93. So thank you guys, 93, which is awesome. Appreciate you guys. But go ahead and touch on this comment, because it is interesting. Yes.
I mean, it would only help. So I talk about crypto as being the great osmosis effect. It's the drainage of fiat or legacy, or really it's just the drainage of power from corrupt and non-transparent or opaque group into a transparent, decentralized group. And so there's really no game you can play, because we're valuing all of our crypto in the stuff that we buy back in fiat. So if you want to take all of your fiat and dump it into crypto and then try to become like the owner of the crypto world, you're going to have way more challenges, because you can't just simply manipulate exchanges. Now, this is where I should bring this up. This is where it gets tricky, though. If all that money were dumped into centralized exchanges in such a way that they owned so much of the market that they were able to range bind these assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we've seen to some extent in recent history, then that could be a slowing deterrent. But that's not crypto. Crypto is not in an exchange. It's on the blockchain. So things like Hex that don't have major exchange support, they would only thrive because that capital is still going to be entering the crypto arena, and you can't sell something you don't own. So to try and devalue things by buying them is an extremely inefficient use of money. And that's probably why you don't see an extra $1 trillion of cash flooding the market every day. It's much more being traded within the market, and then they layer in. So there's no real way around it. That's why crypto is so beautiful. You got to either come and play or stay out of the playground.
Yes, I see this comment here from Kyle, or Kyler Kaufman. It is a great day. It is Thursday. It is awesome. Already got a workout done. To go back on that comment there. There's a angel investor in California who I don't know what firm he's associated with, but his name is Andrew Hofkowitz or something. I don't know what his name is. He's one of the OGs in the angel world, and I just saw a lawsuit that was brought against a cryptocurrency or foundation or something like that, and he is behind that. I used to have respect for that, but there's I think one strategy that big money is going to potentially take is try to use the legal system to steal other people's crypto and to steal and to try to gain control over that way. Just based on, I literally saw this yesterday or 2 days ago. So I was like, Andrew Horowitz or something. Andrew something. Somebody,
yeah.
do you know the name? Andrew or whatever his name is. It Andrew Horowitz or something?
I've heard that name.
He's behind a lot of like big tech investments, right? And you guys can let me know the full name in the comments. But I see him getting behind this lawsuit, and I'm like, this is how people can get into the big money is going to try to approach crypto is through the legal system, right? Because the legal system can still be manipulated. And when Heck Orca is talking about crypto and transparency, one of the reasons that people in the legacy world were able to accumulate a large, economic mass is, well, they're providing value to some degree, but also there's a portion of that comes from the opacity or like the cloud that takes place in the fiat world, which allows you to do things that are nefarious or negative or shady and those types of deals, right? So the increase in transparency, I believe, or maybe it's optimistic, but I think could help push that down. But I see what is happening with Andrew Horowitz or whatever it is, and I'm like, damn, this is going to scare some people because they're going to increase the frequency at which they sue people in crypto, and that's going to scare some people. That's definitely
legal. So yeah, I mean, the laws are made by bankers for the sake of bankers, and then they get lobbied by corporatists for the sake of corporations. But I think with crypto, you are going to see some of that. That's why I've been calling for people to get pretty serious about speaking on the local level with your local representatives about crypto. I'm not saying you have to onboard them and get them to subscribe to Richard Hart's YouTube, although that would probably be tremendous. But there's something to be said about the conversation is beginning to take place, and it's going to take place in the courts long before you hear about it on MSNBC. And there's going to be precedent set, and that precedent's not going to just wish-wash every 6 months. They're going to be pretty firm so that they have a framework to actually, be efficient moving forward. So if we don't have any representation, or if none of the politicians know which side the public stands on, they're just going to take whichever side the money is on. And they might even do that with a lot of public trying to back a different direction. But that's the only fight that we really have right now, unless a couple of hex whales want to talk about putting together a fund for lobbying representatives and then having that on the blockchain. But I haven't heard any of those conversations, at least none that are taken seriously. So I take time to give public speeches at the library, at the universities, and then I go and I have private conversations with my public representatives.
Hey, Orca, you should film those conversations.
Yeah, so I was going to I'm actually just getting permission now with the university. The library wouldn't allow the filming.
Hemorrhoid appointment. Sorry, just had to answer that question. Very quick.
There's some rules with like who you have to have sign and stuff. So it was just a little more like I want to get the information out rather than try to get 100 field flip permission slips or whatever. But moving forward, the university, it sounds like they're going to be cool with filming them, so that should be good branding.
Because that we had talked separately. I don't know if we were on air or not. I don't know if you've already, I might just be saying something that you're like, hey, I'm not ready to share that yet. But about potential future project and like education sources, I think that I like that idea, and I had a similar idea. Think of like Nerd Wallet type of resource for FAQs of search queries on YouTube and on Google, right? So you think of like the top 100 FAQs and you fucking hammer that down in a very simple way in video and text format, and then build a site off of that. Like if that's in your mind, so like maybe we can work together, maybe I can help in some way.
100%.
Like, that's a very exciting thing.
They've tried it, right? Like the Investopedia or whatever, they've tried it, but the problem is they were designed for the legacy side, and then two, they're crypto influence comes from other people. Like they don't have internal crypto knowledge, and you can tell the way the articles are written. They're very biased to just whatever the branded incentive was to talk about. They're going to align with that, and they're not going to deep dive into the code. And I don't think they need to. I think they've served a very valuable purpose for some people looking for general terms and ideas. But we need that in crypto. We need verifiable sources, and it can't just be a Richard Hart echo chamber. As much as I'd love to get everyone to just pump my bags, we need to give credit to all of the positive movements in crypto so that we as a crypto community have an identity and we have a movement. If we're always fighting against one another, we're never going to fight in the direction of momentum. So I think that's where we're still waiting on that verifiable source where people say this stuff's really impactful, it's trustworthy, it's cited, corroborated by experts. Here's examples of those very experts corroborating this information. Because otherwise, you're just taking whichever link you click first. That's now your priority information. And maybe you'll go and look at 2 or 3 more links. Maybe you won't.
And we already know, well, at least I do from the standpoint of Google, there's at least one dude, but there's probably several different, people and organizations that show the bias in search engines where they'll take 2 different segments 100%. Of people, right? So you take, 2 fucking white dudes, right, us, and then they might take 2 people who have a minority, right, of a profile that Google has built about them, right?
Right.
And the searches that they'll get for those people are 100% like woke left leaning, and it's
100%.
Disturbing.
The bias is insane. That's the hardest part about the journey for me when we talk about the learning curve of crypto. It's not like it's a linear thing and you go, okay, day 1, this is the definition of crypto. Okay, day 2, this is what you buy. Day 3, this is when you sell. It's not like that. It's a sponge that's just soaking up random juices, and some of them are piss. Some people are just pissing on your leg. So you got to be able to step back, and not everyone's going to be able to do it, man. That's why when they say we're all going to make it, that's hope talking, because many people are not going to make it because of how difficult it is to find verifiable information without falling into pitfalls along the way. And it's tough because you can spend like 2 years learning a ton of really useful stuff and still fall for some kind of spiral snag that could totally paint a nasty picture of your entire experience, and then you could just disengage. And I've seen it happen a ton of times. But I think a lot of that comes from there's no agreed upon, hey, this is true, this is not true in crypto, or this is something worth looking for, this is something worth avoiding. And maybe there is no one size fits all, but I think we can certainly cut through a lot of the noise that has led to scams by providing our best chance at that.
And the education behind that, because I think about how might be the best way or good ways to approach that, and you have to have trust, right? So whether it's somebody who's on the internet where everybody gets to see your face every day, because then that over time builds trust, right? Then as long as you're not saying stupid shit all the time, right? You can build trust in that, but then also having sources where you can verify stuff and approaching a concept where I think could be helpful in a way when you look at any of these articles or things that are describing say maybe impermanent loss, because it was just something that I've been researching.
Sure.
You look at these I wanted to talk about that because I found it interesting, but when you look at these articles, they have maybe one example, and I think taking that and putting it into 2 or 3 different POVs, because the example that's going to make sense to us is just like you would for advertising, right? If we were going to advertise, we wouldn't run the same creative for us that we run for a 63-year-old female, right? Or and why not do the same thing with the content you create that is specifically tailored to teenage girls or men in their 30s or whatever the case is, right? And tailor the piece of content, including the example, because we know, right, there's some awesome women in the comments, which is beautiful, right? But it's fucking all dudes, right? And that piece is just not being addressed. I think it's a massive opportunity.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, the women of crypto are coming, because for whatever reason, when I go to onboard people, the women are far more responsive than the men. It's probably that testosterone competition bullshit, but they're more open-minded and they're asking really good questions. I was talking to a friend from New Zealand. I was telling somebody else, I said, they had never even heard of crypto. They don't know anything about Bitcoin. And within like 15 minutes, they were already grasping what a DEX is and not just like, oh, okay, so that's like an exchange, like really understanding what a DEX is. And I was like, holy shit, man, this girl is really smart. Like she was like jumping ahead of me and saying like, well, wouldn't that mean that we could do? And I was like, well, what I was about to tell you is like, yeah, you're on it. So I think women will find their space because they're just smarter than us. So eventually they're going to catch up, man.
No, I agree. And that could be the next thing. That could be like the next thing where that's like the bigger adoption thing. You know, when TikTok came out in 2000, I think it was acquired by ByteDance in 2017, right? So it was Musical.ly before that, or something. Maybe it came out as Musical.ly and then was acquired a year later by ByteDance and changed the name to TikTok. And the idea for a lot of people back in the day, if you remember, was TikTok was for like, 13-year-old girls, right? Which was right. Oh, let's dance kind of thing, right? And it was cool, right? But you didn't. Yes. My dancing is just like 110% every day.
Oh, yeah.
But the adoption of TikTok wasn't driven by the 13-year-old girls. It was the 40-year-old dudes coming in, the 67-year-old females coming in. And because there's such a lack of female like energy or in crypto, I think that could really, really drive like adoption over the next couple of years, like tremendously. And I got a little
women would drive way more adoption than men would because men have all recycled it. Look, you can only say the same lie so many different ways until people become numb to it. I've had experiences in life where people that you love and you want to help them, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear, man, for years. So that's all crypto media has become, is a ton of guys saying, well, you should always protect your profits and you should always DCA and this is my new favorite coin. And it's like, okay, that's not super exciting anymore. It would be nice to hear from somebody that maybe has a unique perspective. And unfortunately, we probably need to start breaking into some serious demographics to do that because I don't think a bunch of us bros that go to the gym and then buy crypto are going to have a very diverse conversation after a while. But it's coming, man. I think there's a huge vacuum out there. Bo Burnham, who's a funny comedian, had a good line one time where he said, if you don't need an audience to survive, then I don't suggest you go find one. But some people do enjoy having an audience, and some people do enjoy that being their career, being an entertainer or something like that, or an educator. And there's something to be said about a massive vacuum right now in the space where a woman with charisma that's willing to be well-read on crypto and have unbiased presentation of useful information would. There's already some out there. Let's not pretend that there aren't. But there's still market share out there to be taken off the table that you could become very popular and command a large respect in the space, I think.
And on the and then I have that research paper I want to share in a second. But on the front of what you were just talking about and having an audience, because I've been doing this for a long time in terms of creating content, one of the things that is not really talked about from building an audience or finding an audience, right, that connects with your message, is that it is tremendously valuable. So when I say that, people think like monetary, right? And that's not what I'm saying. Yes, it can be tremendously valuable monetary, but what is tremendously valuable for me is this, right? I'm talking to somebody who has a tremendous amount of experience, who knows more than me on certain topics and whatnot. There is 77 people watching right now that all have different points of view than I do and know things that I don't know. And when you have an audience, right, it allows you to see different things. Like just because somebody will send me a DM and share this little tidbit of information, like this over that I actually got on YouTube the other day. Let me see if I can share this. Which led me down to the path to that research paper I was going to talk about. And these things are so incredibly valuable by being out there. Like I'm sure you learn from people on Twitter who like, hey, Orca, have you ever heard of this thing? And then you're like, no. But then you're like, go down that rabbit hole and learn about it.
It's so valuable. That network effect is so valuable. And that's why I do it too, right? Is because I am learning all the time. And there's so many people with so much more nuance and experience in certain places I haven't gotten to go yet. So I'm never going to try and limit myself from gaining that exposure. And that's why, you do put yourself out there. And I love that you guys come on and say, hey, we're not crypto experts, but we're super open-minded. And you obviously are passionate about learning. And more valuable than being the expert, because the expert can age out of being the expert, but someone who's constantly looking to learn can maintain that relevance.
Yes, it says this is from Hexkin Tattooer. Orca looks like he set up a little nook in a local library.
I'm at the local library.
The setup he has is though dope. Like look at mine. You get like a blank wall back there. I like that setup, dude.
Hey man, I come to the library all the time, and I talk to people about crypto, and I read books, and I go on the computer. So
okay, so that comment, speaking of those people who teach us things, right, or share information with us, which is awesome. And by the way, the DMs are open on Twitter, and eventually we'll surpass GRC in the number of followers. So before he gets on here, go over there. I'm going to show that right now. Go over there. You can check out Orca as well, and you can follow on Twitter. Very active over there. So somebody shared that last comment with me, and this was in regards to a video that Richard Hart did, where this was maybe 4 videos ago or something, where he was talking about exchange of value without selling, or exchanging value in a way to, quote, get around the, in like rules that are coming out in the EU around crypto. And this guy, which is awesome, thanks for this comment, mentions Dandelion++. And I was like, huh. He said that in answer to your last question, could easily be, I did the video to ask, hey, like these are some of my takeaways from what Richard Hart said, and my points of view from this, which I just was like, I'm just sharing my thoughts on his video, right? And one of them was this related to Dandelion++. So I found this paper, and you might have more, understanding of like how this might work related to how somebody could use this to potentially move through the EU regulations in a manner that would be advantageous, right? In a nice way to say that without just getting around to certain things. But Dandelion+ is a lightweight cryptocurrency networking with formal anonymity guarantees by researchers at a university.
Scroll down just like 2 or 3 lines if you don't mind. Thank you. So I'm just reading the abstract.
So, and this is related to Bitcoin. Yeah, go ahead and read the abstract a little bit bigger. What I found as I read through this is that when you're talking about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is anonymous in the sense that you have one address sending to another address, and we don't know that Orca sending me money. All we see is this address sent $50 to this address. We have no idea like who lives behind that, geographically speaking. That's on the blockchain layer, right? And from
trash.
Sorry,
I'm so
please.
skeptical of Bitcoin add-ons.
Okay, but this seems, from reading through this, it seems like this protocol, like the Dandelion++, is just a piece of like that can be added to a cryptocurrency to increase anonymity. And they were using Bitcoin just because that's probably the one that most research is on, because it's like got the name recognition. But I was like, how could this be used to transfer value in a way that kind of like skirts some of those potential rules? Good, because so what it was talking about is how if you look at the blockchain layer just described, that has anonymity, right? Meaning people can't see who you are, where you're located.
Pseudonymity, yeah.
When you look at the network layer, so they got I'm doing a transaction, so that's going to go to a node, right? That node is going to there's a specific word they used in terms of how that spreads the message out, but basically it's like throwing a rock into a pond, and then there's a ripple effect, and that's the signal coming out from the node. So if somebody tracks that over time, they can triangulate where somebody's IP address is, and then using that and something else, they can get hell yes. I'm super excited about crypto. I don't know if you guys can tell. But using that to basically spread that message from the nodes in a different way. And I was wondering, maybe this is like, I have no idea. I have no idea. I read through this and I was going to make a video about it, and I don't fully understand it to like even try to articulate this.
I have to look more into it, but it sounded like they're doing improved anonymity from the IP address layer. I'm like, that's cool. I think there's other ways to do that, maybe without having it be directly in the blockchain. I mean, we probably have other services that achieve something similar to that, but I'll have to read it more to know.
Could like if somebody's tracking the node to try to triangulate who I am, whether it's Bitcoin or some other, right? Or say it's Pulse or something, right? Could
Mhm.
somebody just use a VPN to like get around that?
In some ways, but again, I mean, it's tough, man, because like unless you're gonna invent the internet again, unless you're gonna create the infrastructure, there's a lot of ways for them to contain where the data is coming from. So maybe this Dandelion Plus Plus is a necessary tool. I don't know if it is. I'll research it more though, and we'll have to circle back around and talk about it. But I think the real question is like, what are you afraid of? Like, I'm not one of the people that says if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to be afraid of. No, I'm not government friendly, but do you think that the Dandelion Plus Plus is like, is that the make or break between you being in crypto or not? Are you in crypto for anonymity? Because that's not what crypto is. And so crypto can be anonymous, and there's things that help you do that. I don't know if that's super necessary. I mean, if these governments want to have rules that say like you can't mine Bitcoin in the UK, and so you want to hook up all of your mining nodes to some Dandelion Plus Plus, like I guess, but how are you in an economic situation where you're profiting off of Bitcoin mining and yet you've relegated yourself to a jurisdiction that's not cohesive with your business? That to me is just stupid. And then if you want to get rid of regulations like that, go talk to representatives. So I think there's a lot of incredible work being done to like create a free marketplace separate from the government. But I think whenever you start to push very hard in that direction, you're inviting regulations, and those regulations are like a whipsaw. They're not going to come to put wind at your back. They're going to come to tamp down the movement that they don't see 4 or 5 steps ahead of. So they need to stop it in order to be able to develop their plan, their forward-looking plan of attack. So I don't know. I'll look more into Dandelion Plus Plus. Anytime I see Bitcoin transactions validated by third party, I just hear Lightning Network, and I just hear this isn't crypto, and I just don't give a shit.
It was like what they mentioned is implementing it on the core Bitcoin, whatever, and it doesn't add to latency of the transaction. And it's basically just a change in the algorithm in terms of how the node spreads. So instead of spreading
Which
as
is
like
cool.
a rock,
Sure.
it's more of a randomized approach so that people can't.
Yeah.
Makes it the
It's
data
like,
set.
it sounds
bigger.
cool, but it sounds way cooler if you use anything but Bitcoin for me, because it's like, hey, how about before you worry about your IP address and your anonymity set, how about you fucking process a transaction today? How about you get one wrapped up before the stream ends? Like, could you do that for me? I watched a video of a guy using Lightning Network to pour a beer. I was sitting there for like 40 seconds waiting for his beer to pour. I was like, wow, the future is so lit, man. I can't wait.
Well, last year, so before I got into crypto, like I take payment transactions for certain things in cryptocurrency because people are in other countries and whatnot. And somebody paid me like $50 in Bitcoin, and they're like, "Oh, here's the confirmation shit." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I go to Coinbase. Right, this is when I was just everything on Coinbase. I just let it sit there, or I transfer it to my account when I was like, "Hey, let me take this money out."
Yep.
And they sent about $50, and it took more than 24 hours. More than 24 hours for that shit to clear. Like, what kind of insanity is that? I know a buddy who was in Bitcoin heavier than I was at the time. So I was like, hey, somebody sent me a transaction and they sent me the receipt of it, but like, it's not on my account. What's going on? And he was like, oh, they might have picked the cheapest thing. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And I was like, what the is this? This
just
is
stupid. It's just stupid, dude. Why are we taking a blockchain that's been out for over a decade, hasn't shown any meaningful improvements to its layer 1 deployment? Why are we working so hard to like repair Frankenstein's monster when we can just build something new? Like, and that's what Ethereum was, and that's what Phantom is, that's what BNB is, that's what all these things are. You notice how none of them just said Bitcoin's really onto something. Let's start there and then work on. No, they said cryptography is really onto something. Let's start there and do it better than Bitcoin. That's where every layer 1 has gone since Bitcoin. Nobody's trying to duplicate that shit.
This is an interesting comment that I completely agree with. A lot of the time, lawmakers pass unconstitutional laws. It's not until someone sues to challenge that law that things change. But even then, they will settle. Property taxes are a good example. I think it's one of the island countries that you buy property and you pay a tax, and then you don't pay property tax every freaking year. Like, it's ridiculous. And that just continues to go up on there. But I want to talk about Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex, right? Because that's going to be coming out soon. So
Yeah.
that's going to be super interesting. So what are some things you were thinking about for yourself, for different strategies involved around that? Like how you might approach that, right? Because you're in on both of them, assuming, right? You're on all three.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about this?
So I've got right now I'm just a net buyer because I think that the macro environment is really bearish, and I think the prices are just going to keep going down. So I'm trying to have dry powder on the sideline. I'm not going to be swapping some of this for some of that unless there's just a huge ratio that doesn't make any sense. I don't
So what would be like in your mind? So say if something comes out and it's like, okay, for one PLSX you can get 1,000 pulse, right? Or like something like that. Would that be like a big enough ratio to switch out or something? Okay.
Yeah, that if you start playing insane games with like even just because of temporary slippage and then a vacancy of players, so there's just no like active liquidity moving the prices, and then I come in and I get some crazy ratio, I would absolutely do that. But I'm not from the starting gate, I'm not displeased with my bags at all. So I'm not looking to exchange this for that. I'm looking to just try and get more of everything. So my strategy is more of the pre-launch strategy, and the pre-bridge strategy is having the right ERC20s where the PRC20 pairs will likely have a competitive swap ratio in terms of accumulating more of Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex on the Pulse Chain.
Can you talk about it? What do you? So we have the and I don't fully understand this, right? So Pulse X is going to also be a bridge, so it's a swap and a bridge.
No.
Can you
the
explain
bridge
that,
is so the bridge is a separate protocol. Bridges are just simply like a third-party trusted source to hold asset A and spit out asset A on new chain, wrapped A, if you will. So Pulse X is not the bridge, but see how easy it is for you to think it is because of the vertical integration of who's deploying these brands. So you just assume because of a lot of the functionality of A swap into B, well, that sounds similar to like bringing this in. So it's like,
and it was also like something that he mentioned, RH mentioned in like a video, something about, oh, we're going to have like the bridge with Pulse X and or like something along the lines of like, we're going to have, swap and or DEX and a bridge with Pulse X or something. And maybe it was just casual. Maybe I misheard it or whatever.
Probably.
And then I was like, oh, wait, this is.
Yeah, I can clear it up a little bit. So like
Please.
There will be a bridge. I can't remember the exact name of the bridge, but then there will also be Pulse X. The bridge doesn't have liquidity. A lot of people fuck that up and say that. The bridge is just simply, I will hold this asset and then the protocol will spit out a wrapped version of it. If a wrapped version comes in, I will spit out the unwrapped version, but this doesn't get to go anywhere now. That's all it does. So it's not a marketplace for trading. It's simply a marketplace for my MetaMask is currently set to the Ethereum wallet, and I have an asset in there. Maybe it's called Hex on Ethereum. And I just want to go put it into my view of all of my assets that are on the Pulse Chain network. And so I take it through the bridge, and now when I switch my settings on MetaMask from Ethereum to Pulse Chain, I now have that wrapped Hex in there along with my Pulse Chain, along with my Pulse X. So that's all the bridge has done. It's just allowed me to move in here. Now that I'm in here, I might say, this wrapped Ethereum Hex has a really good ratio to trade with Pulse Chain. I'm going to swap through the Pulse X protocol some of this wrapped Hex for the Pulse Chain because of the rate. I like the rate.
What? So is P Hex going to be the same thing as the wrapped Hex that you're talking about?
No.
Can you explain that?
Of course. This is critical for people to understand. A wrapped asset is different than the airdrops you're receiving for Pulse Chain. The way to think about it is this. If you have Hex on Ethereum, Hex on Pulse Chain, while they both operate with the same features that you're familiar with, they can both stake, they both inflate at the same rate, they do the exact same thing. What you can't do is take Hex from Ethereum and stake it on Pulse Chain because the contract is an Ethereum contract. Even if they become worth the same price and they can trade for 1-to-1, I can take one Ethereum Hex, bridge it into Pulse Chain, and trade wrapped Ethereum Hex for Pulse Chain hex on a 1-to-1, I still would not be able to stake the wrapped Ethereum hex on Pulse Chain because those contracts do not communicate to those networks. It's simply a wrapped placeholder that represents that this asset, which does work on Ethereum, is being dealt with on a chain over here. Now, if you think that the utility is still equal value when it's brought back to Ethereum, which it should be because the contract interacts on Ethereum, then that's why the value of a wrapped token is oftentimes identical in price to its unwrapped counterpart.
Oh, so even though it's a derivative on a different network, it a lot of times can hold parity?
Because the supply is fixed. The bridge holds whatever you put into the bridge, and it says, okay, this is locked, and then it spits out a wrapped version on the other side. And it says that supply can't be used, only what's spit out is the wrapped version. So if the previous formula was there's 100 in supply and they're each worth $1, well, whether I bridge it or not, there's still only 100 in supply. I haven't created 101 now.
So is that why bridges have been a target, because they accrue value?
Yeah, there's a lot of value that can be held, and usually they're being targeted. Like the bridge that got hacked on Solana was actually not the bridge itself. It was actually Solana's code that was messed up. And the more tech-savvy hacker population can speak to that. But essentially, I guess the issue wasn't with the bridge. It was actually with the network. And that's why you got to have these high-quality networks and security audits and things like that, is those vulnerabilities are cherry-picking off of you're using third-party trust to create the wrap bridging action. And then as it's deployed, that's the third-party touch risk, is it's not my keys, my crypto. Now it's deployed on the blockchain. It's back into a private key setting. What if it doesn't go to my private keys? What if it's deployed into someone else's keys? And so there's going to be parity of wrapped. You can go look right now. Wrapped Ethereum costs the same as Ethereum. It might be off by like $100 or something.
Where's the bridge coming from then? Who's putting that code out there?
So they are using previously battle-tested code. Now, John McVoy in the community, who's very hacker-oriented, security-oriented, he brought up a great point. He would like to see Richard come out and address, do we have security audits for the bridge?
Correct.
Security audits.
That's so scary. You touched on it right here. We saw him touch on it on several different streams. Everybody's probably slightly aware that bridges have been like a target or vulnerable for like attack and being like successful attacks to steal a lot of money, right? Like, I mean, that's gonna scare people to bridge their fucking money in, right? Like, what do you see on that? Like that.
It's scary, right? So there's going to be smaller amounts. Like, you're not just going to entrust 100 ETH across the bridge at a time. You're going to test it a few times and then do some retroactive security analysis. You're going to have to, whether it's Richard or somebody, a whale in the Pulse Chain ecosystem, is going to have to deploy some money to have people go at this thing. Now, that's what the testnet's for. And you hope that people are able to break it so that you can fix it before you go mainnet. But even once it goes mainnet, people are going to be skeptical. That's the biggest challenge.
So it's somebody else in the ecosystem who's put together previously utilized successfully software as a bridge, that bridge is now going to be deployed as a bridge between ETH and Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is interesting. This is good because I didn't know any of this shit. Okay, thank you. By the way, we should give a thumbs up for Orca, and don't forget to check him out on Twitter. Check myself out on Twitter, or subscribe.
Just to bring a little, like, just a final piece of clarity to the wrapped, unwrapped, and the PRC.
Please.
You can also take a PRC20 and put it through a bridge, and then it becomes a wrapped PRC20 on Ethereum. But it's still just 1-to-1. I can bridge it back and have PRC20 on Pulse Chain, wrap it.
Ethereum. Yeah, I agree. Orca is a man. This is fucking awesome.
Molly's the OG, man. He's
yeah. He's been very helpful. He came out and helped everybody out the other day. So awesome. It's awesome. So
good one to learn from.
Yes, definitely. So when you think about that, the idea behind that is that like somebody could take any PRC and bring it over to Ethereum versus so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, Why would somebody do that versus just swapping on Pulse X?
For the wrapped Ethereum version of it? Or I'm
Like-
a little bit confused.
Okay.
Why would somebody bridge into Ethereum with a PRC20 as opposed
Yeah.
to just swapping? Well,
Yeah. No, you're right, because I was missing that piece of it. Yeah, because then you're on a
that's the
network,
secret, right?
right?
That's how.
Yep.
That's why it's 1-to-1. That's why it matters.
Well, so what are some reasons or thoughts on why people will bridge shit in?
Oh man, there's economic incentive. There's real fees to be made. Richard has tried to beat it into everyone's head. You don't have to agree with it. There's maybe some arguments to be made against it, but in reality, this is a time where you've never had half of your liquidity pair put up for free. So if you were already providing liquidity in the Hex USDC pair, and now you have Pulse Chain Hex and Pulse Chain USDC, and I understand the whole they could invalidate the USDC. Sorry, we could say DAI. If you have Ethereum DAI Hex pair, and now you have Pulse Chain DAI Pulse Chain Hex for free, and you were already providing liquidity in the Hex DAI pair, I mean, now it's a no-brainer. It's like, we'll just go provide that same liquidity, but do it with the added incentive and being a first mover. So you're not competing with as many people in that pool. So you're going to earn a higher proportion of the fees. There's huge economic incentive.
So because you're doubling your tokens, you're going to earn effectively more fees, so to speak. Plus, you're early in the game, which tend to have earlier fees as well.
You're going to earn fees for 50% of the upfront cost. If I have 1,000 DAI, I can now put up, because Uniswap V2 needs 2 sides.
So you're going to put $1,000 each versus now you're just putting 1,000, but you get the same return.
And I get the other 1,000 just gifted to me. And so now, boom, and now I can put that up. And even if the PRC20 is really, they're not in price parity, and so to put up an even amount, I have to put up maybe a heck of a lot more of the PRC20 because it's worth so much less. Well, that's super cheap and I can go buy it for pennies on the dollar. So I've only helped pump my own bags because that buying pressure will create a closer approach to parity. So you really you create people are going to all these other networks to provide liquidity for other reasons, but they have to pay for both sides of their liquidity there, or they're trying to use some platform program to get a little subsidized kickback, but ultimately they're providing the lion's share of the liquidity. The other thing is, Pulse Chain could thrive as just a transaction network for Ethereum. People could just say, wow, do I really want to spend a gas fee to do like 7 or 8 trades? Or would I spend 1 Ethereum bridge fee to get into Pulse Chain, do a baker's dozen trades for free, essentially, get my positions where I want them. And then if they are Ethereum assets and I only have an Ethereum off-ramp to get my fiat, I can still just go back to it. I can wrap it again, take 1 bridge fee.
For bridges, so you have mainnet fee, which is to be virtually zero, right? Mm-hmm. And then is there a bridge fee like there is with Pulse X?
I believe it's going to just be a transaction fee. I don't think that the bridge keeps it, but I could be wrong there. It depends on what the protocol is, so I can try to look up.
I completely agree here with Sandy Beach. This is awesome information, dude. Like the bridge, the Pulse X, like in the the separation there of those two, where it was super cloudy for me, is very, very helpful for me. And if it's been helpful to anybody else in the comments, like that's freaking awesome. I'm glad that's the case.
It can be confusing, right? Especially when you keep saying, like, everyone in this community is so familiar with Hex, but after you say the word Hex like 100 times, and then you throw a P in the front of it, it's like, oh my God, what are we talking about, man? Is it rap?
What's up, boy?
We have GFC. Hey, how did your hemorrhoid appointment go?
What'd you say?
Nothing.
So
we were.
It went beautifully. 82.9 million maxi minted so far. Producer Paradigm. That's pretty cool.
Am I allowed to FUD Baxi on this show? It's not real FUD. I'm just gonna be so bitter when my APY on all my existing stakes goes down because y'all have put together an army of Hex.
No, I know, but really, it's 150 million max, not max.
No, it's only good, man. It's only good for Hex's
question.
strength.
Orca, a question for you or GRC if you know this, but like, okay, so we're gonna have Hex Pulse and we're gonna have Hex ETH, right? How does that work on the Pulse side? Like, is it gonna start back kind of like zero, like it did?
It starts at 0. First buy makes the bottom, and then and then the
No. From a staking standpoint, like where
the staking state will be duplicated across. So whatever the T-share rate was at the time, whatever the daily payout was at the time, at moment 0, that'll all be equal, and then there will be a divergence.
Does this theoretically cut the value of Hex in general in half?
I don't know. Oh, okay. So yeah, I saw people asking about that because of the PRC20.
Wow, you're just doubling the supply.
Right, doubling the supply. Okay, so no, that's not really what's happening. We're actually not doubling the supply because, as I was explaining to Sam right before you hopped on, I can't stake Pulse Chain Hex on Ethereum. I can't do that. So they're actually two different contracts.
Ecosystems.
And even though you go, yeah, but they do the same thing, and maybe there's arbitrage. The reality is the arbitrage is a benefit because otherwise, look, 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. So if the PRC20s are really only worth 0, well, then you're not doing how much is Hex worth divided by 2. You're just doing how much is Hex worth plus 0. That's all you've done because the only people getting the airdrop are the people that already own the Hex. So you're not being diluted. You're just being given the additional opportunity to create value there. Could the price of
I mean, you could definitely
Sure.
hit off of it because you're just making whales ginormous, bigger whales and having more volume over two systems.
Well, okay. So we're gonna have 2 system states for Hex copy on each network, right? We're gonna have one.
You're just copying it once you're copying it one time over.
But now we have an interesting thing that could happen, and I definitely see this playing out because of the fees here. We have a say an adoption growth rate of X on Ethereum. Every day there's a certain number of people that are getting onboarded. Now on Pulse, right? And say the APY currently is 38%, which is interesting because it's not what I'm getting on mine. And I did 15 years, so I'm sure maybe it just needs more time to like build. You guys can, but that's for another conversation. But the point of it is on Pulse, because the fees are lower, adoption could be higher, which could actually have a disparity in the interest earned.
I know it's so annoying though, because
between Pulse and Hex.
It's impossible to predict what Ethereum fees will look like a year from today.
That's true.
But
it's impossible because you can't extrapolate that it won't be at least close to cheap. And if it's close to cheap, the advantage Ethereum has is it already has all the users. So if it's even close to cheap, like if it's even under $10, like it's gonna have a lot more benefit.
You don't want to hop over to something else.
That could be what you were talking about to the bridge, or going back and forth between the 2 networks could be very interesting because
you should check out my video about it.
Why don't you leave it in the comments, dude?
I'll go find it. It's probably too long, man.
I might be because that's super interesting because think about that. If you, on the one hand, right, you could say you got 3 scenarios. You got they maintain parity in the interest rate, right? Highly unlikely that's going to happen, in my personal opinion. The other side is that Ethereum has a higher interest rate because the higher fees, which reduces adoption. Pulse Chain has a lower interest rate because adoption increases, thus driving down the interest rate. The other would be the inverse of that, where Pulse Chain has, because it's relatively new, the adoption takes time to switch over, right? So the current trajectory of ETH is here. The trajectory of like Pulse Chain is like, the slope of the line is not as high in terms of the growth rate of adoption, and that could change, and there could be a crossover point. That's like super fascinating. I'm going to dive more into this as like a separate video because
adoption
awesome.
is just really almost like that's what the smartest people in the world look at. You know what I mean? They don't get into the technicals. They say how. You know what I mean? They say how many people, how sticky is this, and why? Why do people want this? Why is it sticky? And Richard thought about these things before he started the project. You know what I mean? Like he was thinking about marketing and crypto. And that was, I would say somewhat new. Like marketing and crypto is still just like the Wild West, brand new.
Yeah.
You're getting offered to rug pull people in direct dialogue.
Yeah, it's so crazy,
you
man.
and say like, here, we're going to rug pull everyone. We're doing 100,000 promo. Like, and they're just like, oh, cool. Send
And
the
those
money.
like rosters of like all the people and their prices and stuff, just like, hey, yeah, whatever you want, man.
Yeah, it's just like
$1,400 and I'll sell
a
it.
candy store for sellouts, and they're looking for soulless humans. Whoever's up, go get your money, because they will give it to you, and you can ruin your career in the same exact token. Good luck doing that, guys. That's not going to work long term. I'm telling you. I mean, maybe it does for BitBoy and shit, but I don't care what anyone
Even
says.
he's tried to move away from it because he sees it as
No, he's not.
to
I
his
mean, like,
brand.
he said it, but Jesus, I watched him.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Is he's trying
He was
to
talking
move
about the
brand away
XRP
from it.
army and all sorts of fucking
Oh
shit.
yeah, man. He knows how he got popular.
We right before you came on, we were talking about the bridge, and I was curious, how do you access the bridge? Like where? So you obviously, if you want to use PulseX, you just go to pulsex.com, right? And there'll be a DApp button. I'm assuming, like you can go to.
Sam, have you not played with the testnet?
Is there a bridge on the testnet?
Yeah.
There is. Oh, so it just ties into.
I think they call it like a ramp, maybe. Maybe it's called bridge.
Oh, okay, and that it is on there where you can do that.
So you can hook up the Ethereum testnet and the Pulse Chain testnet, and then you can bridge.
Pretty sure if you go to Faction Coder, she has a nice little couple videos actually. I'm not kidding, dude. She had a couple little good like how-to videos on how to do some testnet stuff. I was checking them out, dude.
Yeah, so you're bridging
testnet. She's nice to
into
listen to.
testnet.
All the guys, I'm like, she's
What
like, well, this we're gonna bridge, and I'm like, okay,
I can keep
bridge.
Well, because like. This is all new information for me. Like what Orca was
What
saying.
have you hooligans been talking about?
Awesome.
Oh man, we've been covering
stuff.
all sorts of stuff.
Guys,
Very
in the
good.
comments, let me know how these hooligans were doing.
Yeah, Tatalados.
Were the bongs out? What was going on?
Yeah.
I mean, did they whip the bongs out the second GRC got
I think my eyes cleared up.
What if you guys pulled under the table and you were just like, finally that square's out of here?
Man, we're just bringing the good word, man. I was actually, to Sam's point about the interest rates and stuff, or the yield, I should say.
Please.
There's several schools of thought out there currently as to how parity might occur, or will yield parity be sought in terms of arbitrage. I wanted to get your guys' opinions on, do you see, this is just an opinion, right? There's no right answer here. Do you think that the
Unless it's
Ethereum,
mine. Go ahead.
yeah, unless it's yours. Do you see the Hex APY on Ethereum being higher than it is currently? So let's say that you're getting like roughly 6 hex per T-share daily right now.
So
do you think that it'll go higher than 6 per day?
It could transition into a different, like it could slope the other way because of
maybe we'd get 8 per T-share, because maybe there's enough economic energy that says, no, I'm Pulse Chain maxing. I really want to go and take advantage of lower fees because that's better for their money. Is that enough of the economic mass in the ecosystem to increase the payout in hex terms versus what we're currently being offered?
Just
in the future, that number has to go up.
I want to understand this more. This is black tea, fresh ginger, and a lot of times there's lemon. Those are very helpful for your health and other reasons. But one of the reasons I do it is for blood pressure. But sorry, going back to what you were saying, Orca, or GRC, what, on that topic. Go ahead.
I think it's kind of known. Like, I mean, everyone says it. What you were getting 1 hex per T-share at some point,
right?
You were getting 1 hex per T-share at some point.
So, but are you asking?
Are you hex per T-share at the time? I mean, they might have. Some people might have. Are
you asking, is the T-share going to go up, or is the T-share on ETH going to be higher than the T-share on Pulse?
No. Keep the T-share price the same. Do you think the reward daily, so the amount of new hex you accrue daily, do you think it'll be more than 6 hex per T-share? Say like a month after the launch of Pulse.
It has to be, bro. Dude.
Why?
You think
so
so?
many bags and staking throughout the years. Like I'm one of those guys that thinks 99% of people are not going to end stake on time, and I mean not going to end their stake when they're supposed to, and they're going to end it a little early. Like 99% of people will end most of their stakes of any volume a little bit early after 2 years or so, because the economic mass is so much higher than it was initially, and they're so broke or whatever, they're just living life. But you know what I mean? They're like, oh, I can make 400 grand right now, or I could like delay gratification for another decade. And I have
it's hard to delay that gratification with $1 million sitting in your face.
Right. And you have 5 other stakes, and you're like, well, you know, like that's how it starts, right? And then the next one you do it, and then the next one you do it, and the next one you do it. But that is also acceptable. Like, you got to understand, 15-year stakes, none of them are going to last 15 years unless the dude is so rich that he doesn't even look at his shit.
I see people going like that, definitely being a thing. I completely agree with you, GRC, on that. But I also see another like thing on top of that is the more new people get into crypto,
I'm locked the fuck in.
Sorry
about it, guys. Just fucking on the road, back in like it's nothing. GRC is flexible, baby.
The more people who are new that come in, the increase in penalties will go up from people who are losing their seed phrases. So, right, everybody here likes to think that they're like good on that shit, but what happens in 4 years down the road? Like at one point in my life, in a 2-year period of time, I lived in 5 different states, right? If somebody has that level of like movement in their physical life, there's a increased probability that that person's going to lose access to their seed phrases, which is going to increase the penalties, right? So I would think that the rate or the amount of hex per, given that, you know, there's going to be some people who just find it more advantageous to end their stake now instead of waiting 12 more months, even they're 2/3 of the way they're through their shit, right? They're like, well, it doesn't matter. I put in 20 grand and now I've got 400 grand, right? They're gonna be, oh my god, it's like life changing for them enough to like just be like, nah, I'm not gonna wait any longer. So that's gonna cause some. But then I also see like, and I think this is underplayed because so many people are so careless with their shit, and they're just gonna be like, you know, people who are just, you know, their houses get burglarized, there's gonna be like, you know, the washer.
Imagine how much Bitcoin will never be sold or claimed because it's on a lost wallet.
Like exactly like mine. I had a Bitcoin. It's lost 100%.
There's a million stories of people with fatty bags losing their shit, like fucking hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, and they're like, yeah, I was looking in the fucking local landfill for the last 6 months, and I have an investigator team fucking digging up the landfill.
But with Hex though, it's awesome because that shit doesn't get lost.
Yeah,
which is it's because we trust. It's because we trust Hex though too. Like I mean, yes, the front end is immutable, and so that part is there. I mean, not the front end's not immutable, but there's so many front ends, and it's so versatile. Hex now because of the community, it's very like that's the one thing I get weird about Staker app. Like I like all the stuff about Staker app, a lot of the ideas, but that single front end attack space is weird for me. Like, who else is there? You know,
what do you see between Pulse Hex and ETH Hex in terms of the average duration of, because that's going to change too, right? We have 6.4 years.
It's going to start just like ETH Hex did, probably. People are going to stake and chill all across the board. There'll be more savvy hexicans, of course, now than there was then. But I think all the new users will stake everywhere, blah, blah, blah. Is it, when they do the stake link, do they do it per account or per volume on average?
So I think it's got to be by the volume. It's got to be like the average stake length based on the volume of hex that's locked up, because
it's kind of manipulatable.
Yeah, no, that's a very those are things to talk about. Yeah, I mean, what's a 7-year average stake length if it's 1 million stakes of 1 hex versus 1 stake of 1 million hex, you know, and so
right. So that's interesting. It is
how does
to know all this stuff, but it's just marketing.
How does that affect things if we've got, say if on ETH it continues to creep up slightly, right? So that goes from 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, right? But what if the, you know, average, right, is going to start at 6.4 because it's just copied, and then do you think the behavior is going to hold where that?
I don't.
What? So can you talk to us about that? What do you think?
I think so. One, I think that the markets are always more dynamic than anything I'm going to think. so prepare for way more nuance than I can provide. There's, in my opinion, a value proposition of Pulse Chain that is immediately identified by everybody as the low fees. Okay. So there's an argument to be made about a lot of people acquiring Hex and staking Hex on Pulse Chain. And I think that you would expect people to be more prone to stake on Pulse Chain than they would on Ethereum, just for the fees. Price appreciation aside, they just don't want to have their money eaten up by Ethereum.
Yeah, but we've never had other options that were trusted
Sure.
either. Like within the Hex
Sure.
community, what if everyone's like, "Fuck this, let's just single-sided Pulse X stake," and then fuck it.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
better rate, and it's going to be a good thing for a year or so till the rate ratchets down or whatever. So because there's not the only reason we all stake Hex, truthfully, is because we don't want to put our money anywhere else. Too like
Right,
if
it's the
there was
store
like 10
value, the
options that
store
were
value.
lit, like I would probably think about them, but I get sketched out about everything.
Well, Orca's probably run the numbers on this before, but if you're in finance,
Hey Orca, would we likely be able to swap? Hold on, let me read this one. Hex Orca, would we likely be able to swap on the Pulse chain?
Wrapped Hex.
What is that? Wrapped Hex when bridged for P Hex at highly lucrative price to essentially multiply your Hex holdings before you reach parity.
Good question. That's a good question.
But then it depends on your economic mass too. Like how much mass are we bridging over here? Like,
well, it's probably a relatively small. I mean, like I would
bridging stuff over is not cheap.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be cheap.
No, it does not have to be cheap. Bridging is.
I thought you said it was just a Pulse fee.
No, you have to pay a fee on the sending
Yeah,
side.
you got to go both ways.
So you're going to have a fee of Ethereum and a fee of Pulse.
Yeah.
But the Pulse will be almost next to zero. So really, you're just dealing with the one side of it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? So somebody brings over their wrapped Hex ETH, and then they take that to Pulse X and they switch that. They switch that out and swap it for P Hex at potentially, because they could trade at not parity, right? The wrapped Hex could be
That's the argument
lower.
for price parity. They're just creating the argument for price parity.
I think there could
What
be
are you doing if you do this? You're bringing over wrapped Hex and then you're selling it, right? So the price of wrapped Hex is having a downward force, and then you're buying P Hex, so the price of P Hex has an upward force. So what are the two prices doing? They're approaching parity. I took so that video that I shared earlier in the comment was simply taking the alternative approach. Richard has already said he doesn't expect there to be cheap Pulse Chain Hex available. This is what he's referring to. Enough of this behavior will occur fast enough that price parity is the logical outcome.
Wow,
Will it be the guaranteed outcome? I don't know. But it's the logical
we
outcome.
talk to Richard, please, Richard. Richard, if
What
you're
about
watching this, can we pick your brain for like 30 minutes, bro? I've been grinding, bro. Let me pick your brain, bro.
there's going to be 4 hexes, right? So there's going to have to be some anomaly.
Yeah, but it's really only 2. It's really only 2 because the other 2 are wrapped versions, and they're just, you can't have one wrapped and one
Technically,
real.
it's almost
just
3. It's
one
3.
becomes an.
Well, it'll be 4. It'll be 4, right? So there's going to be 2 wraps, one ETH wrap,
Oh,
and
Pulse
then
Chain
one
wrap Hex, and then ETH wrap Hex, and then
right. But there's going to be anomalies just from the different players happenstance, right? Those are going to happen. It's just going to happen, right?
Can these things get botted out? Are there dudes with bots right now that are rich as fuck, like hiring teams to like bot all this shit out?
Yes,
probably. But there's going to be massive
green room talk that I've been getting into late night after a couple of beers. It gets a little weird. People start talking about bots and like yield farming.
There's
bots.
a lot of
and I'm like, are all the big players botting it up? Like, because that would make more. That's when I want to talk to Richard or someone who's a way balls deep in the game. Like, at what point is this just all automated?
So think about this for a second. When you compare crypto to FX, right, foreign exchange markets, you have or equity markets like stock or the bond markets, right? You have a saturation of what you're talking about, GRC. You have a fuckload of players who are doing exactly what you're talking about for fractions of a penny. That's why they need leverage to multiply those fractions of a penny to make them bigger by using other people's money to amplify their returns. However, if you look at crypto is like these giant funds, like Blackstone just came out with fucking enormous earnings, right? Well, if you look at these companies, they're looking for yield. The yield is not in the legacy world, it is in crypto. So I don't personally believe, and I don't have the experience, but
Or some of that with legacy.
I don't think there's nearly as many players trying to arb these opportunities as there is in.
Dude, I think we're
other
just
world.
about there, dude. I think it's almost like at least like bottom level. Like if there's
How-
there's a limit,
how?
I know this is all speculative as fuck. Like I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. But like if there's a limit, like I've seen enough from the guys that I know, and I'm just a rando to know like bots are just normal chit chat around here now. Like,
But
it's like I'm trying to figure out how to get a bot. Like I don't even fucking, and I'm sure I'll do it.
But if you believe that crypto is the people in crypto are 2% of the global population, then you have 98%.
What percent of the population is invested in anything? I would like to hear that number, like 20%.
Well, what you have to define what is invested, right? Do people use dollars to transact?
Any legacy
in
asset
one form that's investment.
Any legacy asset that you have to use the internet to probably deal with.
So you have 98% of the global population that uses legacy. That means there's a lot more players that are trying to arb these versus 2% of the world population trying to arb
for
this.
sure.
So just numbers couldn't add up. There's just no, like, unless I'm missing something, there's just
but everyone in finance just has a guy that covers everyone's shit. It's like crypto is your own shit. It's like it's yours. It's Sam's. Sam is the bank. And what other finance? You can't even get into legacy finance bottom level of shit. You can't. You can't be a whale. You can't do anything.
But
there's no opportunity there either, unless you already have $10 million and 100 white friends that laugh all day while they fucking, you know what I mean? Like those guys are already laughing to the bank before this even started.
I think there's going to be tremendous opportunity.
Oh no, for sure, absolutely.
I don't think a lot of humans
plebs, like we'll talk about this again in a year. I think for plebs like myself, I'm not saying this. Obviously, I could do anything if I really put my mind to it. I think there's pros that are already locked in. Like, and it'll just even out. What I'm saying is it'll just even out, like to the point where it's just like.
Yeah, but that's going to take years for that to even out. But what are you? Because there's just not enough players in this market. There's just not enough players.
He sacrificed $1 billion, $1 billion for nothing. He told everyone it was for nothing. He said, "Don't expect anything." And $1 billion came in 17 days.
$1 billion is fucking peanuts.
I know, dude, but that's still like just like like that's what I'm saying. There's not a whole. It's not a company that's like, all right, we're making a decision, sign the paperwork, we're giving half of 20% to this. It's just random dudes that have hundreds of $1 million everywhere.
So exactly.
It's
so you
a different
10
market.
People, 150 people, 1,000 people, 3,000 people that are trying to arb things. Okay, cool. Compare that to legacy, where you have 17 million people trying to arb it. Like, there's gonna be massive opportunity.
There's definitely gonna be massive opportunity. I think for myself personally, the massive opportunity being that I don't have $10 million is to buy these things and hold them because I just know I'm gonna get rich from it and I'll stake them accordingly because we're the first ones here.
There's something to be said about when we talk about legacy finance and their role in crypto. It's the same concept I bring up with CoinMarketCap and why Hex is not at its true rank when we talk about gatekeeping. But there's this isn't a gatekeeping situation as much as it is the secondary effect of cannibalism, right? CoinMarketCap wants to make volume, or Coinbase, we could say, wants to make volume off of trading or fees off of trading volume. Hex buyers tend to buy and hold. They don't buy, sell. They try to buy and hold is maybe a narrative that you could convince me of. Then what's the point of legacy finance who is responsible? They are obligated to prop up all of these equities, right? They are the faucet through which the Fed issues monetary policy. So that's why they own the indexes. They have to own every company because it's their fiduciary responsibility in order to provide the market with a competitive and neutralized, riskless, relative to the market asset to invest in. It's no different than the 401k opportunity. It's no different than a pension. And the idea there is that why would BlackRock ever want to show anybody that they could make tremendous gains in crypto when that's going to cannibalize their fiduciary benefit over in legacy? I'm going to lose trading volume in legacy so that you can get rich versus my dollar in crypto, and I don't even get a slice of it. No one's going to touch that. And then there's also some laws in place with regard to public offering versus private offering and what these players can and can't touch. So when you look at it, there's a reason that, it's not
They can't
gatekeeping
touch
so much as
this.
it's like, look, it's
They
bad for
can't touch
business.
this.
Yeah, I'm not going to go broke helping you get rich against me, because remember, we're
Oh
only
God,
rich
it's
versus the dollar.
unquantifiable, this merge of markets that's occurring. It's never occurred before. I just can't
Never has.
see at this magnitude with this much technology and speed, and just like Elon Musk can switch his whole game plan on a tweet, and it's like the whole market rolls with it. Like
It's awesome.
they're just like, first of all, I think that's kind of illegal. Second,
That's why I believe
you
the
know
world
what
is
happened?
going to be a good place in the future.
Think about what happened, dude. Think about what happened 50 years ago. Instead of it being open in the market where like normal people could make money off of somebody's tweet, it would be like the three of us in the back room having a whiskey and smoking cigars and telling people what we're gonna fucking do with each
Just
other.
lying,
So that
yeah.
and you, the three of us, are fucking making massive amounts of money, and we're just wrecking everybody else.
So it's literally BitBoy at a corporate scale. It's just they're just not. It's not corporate yet. It's not that much money yet. Like, it's a good amount of money those guys probably make. They might rack up $1 million a year, something like that, doing the show. They have big numbers, dude. So I would say that's probably true. But at the same time, it's like, if the market was just legacy, they would just be dudes in suits. They just don't have suits on and shit because they don't give a fuck, because it's not structured like that. Right? They're just paid to play dorks, and that's who want to suck dick for a living instead of make their own ideas. It's like, but that's not the wrong thing to do. A lot of us are growing up teaching us that's the way to go. So
I think so. When we look at Elon Musk can put out a tweet and then that can disrupt markets, the fact that you haven't yet, and maybe this will change, but you haven't seen like Google step up to the plate and say, we'll put in a bid for Twitter, and then like Joe Biden's administration say like, we're cool with it. The reason that you haven't seen stuff like that is because governments don't thrive when people are oppressed. I know that sounds backwards because all we see currently
I would
are
love you
governments
to
oppressing
keep
people.
going on this one.
But the reality is that they need productivity in order to achieve their goal, which is tax revenue, which is just in order to remain in their position. Public positions are basically like royalty. You don't really work for shit, and you have a lot of your things comped for you. So that's stats, that's luxury. That's what I want to maintain. I don't benefit from locking everyone up and minimizing productivity. That reduces my tax income. That reduces my tax revenue. I actually, as the oligarch of the world, want the world to thrive. I just want it to thrive beneath me.
Because they'll never get to where you're at. They'll never,
Right.
if you run the system, they can't out.
Right. It's more valuable than money. It's more valuable than money. I decide who's free. That's more valuable than money.
It's just like what a good comparison is on a smaller scale, a really popular YouTuber that's kind of broke, right? I'm talking like really popular. Let's say like he's got 400K subs, grassroots, great channel, great information. He's crushing it. He could still be broke, right? You could still, like, if you have kids and shit, like that could be nothing, right? But but people look up to it. Has nothing to do with really money. It's not like, oh, how much money
people want
is this? And that's something I learned early on. I was like, I don't have to lie about how much money I have. All my friends have money and they're retarded.
There's some of that.
Literally, that's what I said in my head. I'm like, not all my friends, but I'm like, I know guys with lots of money that are smart, quick-witted, amazing, and I know guys that have money that I'm like, I would not take 1 ounce of information from you. How are you even like in this position right now? Yeah. But so it's kind of the same thing. People just look up to that, like, oh, shiny thing. And I like to remind people, like, YouTubers are just like people that are a little bit more extroverted and put themselves out there a little bit more, like. But it's not a place of power. Like, people assume because you have someone on your show that like it's like, oh, you're scamming people because they're like in the same picture as you. I'm like, who the fuck am I? Like, when did I is a YouTuber like a financial advisor? Do they have any like links? No, just because we're speaking like English.
Yeah. But you are a voice for the people, and that voice is what shapes culture. It's what shapes progress. So a government doesn't want to. We've seen what's more productive. Centrally planned governments like China or the United States. It's not even close. We destroyed them with our banking infrastructure before the turn of the previous century, and they had thousands of years head start on us. But the reality is that when you give people the opportunity to compete, while there is going to be manipulation and there is going to be corruption, there's also a lot of incentive for innovation, and that's why we've excelled. Now we're tapering off a little bit, but for 100 years, it built the empire of America. So when an Elon Musk, who has way higher public approval ratings than the administration that's currently in charge, says, I want to do something, and then the rest of the world, all of us pledge say, we support that. The government has to make a decision. Do I want to tamp down someone who's fighting to control free speech? He wants it to be free. Maybe that's not in the government's best interest. But you know what is in the government's best interest? Not pissing off their 350 million constituents that pay the tax revenue, who could also drag them out by their shoes and hang them in the streets. So there is a balance there. As much as it feels top down in the way that the law is delegated, the culture is delegated bottom up. And it does take sometimes large personalities like an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos or a Richard Hart or somebody to ruffle feathers.
And we got more coming, I think.
There are
we got more coming too. I think I think there might be a little comeback in the entrepreneurial, like, United States industry with Elon, all this Twitter action. There's a lot of, it's the ease in which you can get popular if you have a good product and like money. It's like, let's say you just have money, like, right, like, you whatever. If you had a product, if I had a product and like a fuck ton of money, like, I'm like, in the United States, you can do it. Like, you can legit just do it. It's pretty crazy because people say like, oh, every business fails, 1 in 20 business. Yeah, because 1 in 20 business, no one really gives it a good fucking shot. And then they don't preload their entire life to like be ready for a business venture. Right.
Right.
So it's like, I know, like, if Sam's like, I've been writing the blueprint for this business for 10 years and now I have $10 million and I'm ready to deploy it. I'd be like, wow, that'll probably fucking work. Like,
there's been a resurrection of people like me. I would not work for a company if they're like, hey, you need to wear a diaper on your face. Right? Like, I would just be like, peace, right? And there's millions of people that are just like me across the United States that have been like, I'm getting the fuck out of this system because of you fuckers who don't know what you're doing in supposed, quote, leadership positions that are like incompetent, in my opinion.
Completely.
Decisions. And the companies that have been created over the last 26 months or so, there's going to be companies that are going to be bigger than Uber. There's going to be companies that are bigger than Google. There's going to be big companies. It might take 36 months or it might take another 96 months for these things to play out. And it might play out as in they are the company as a crypto or something like that. But it's good. The things that are happening right now, because the distillation of information from a silo, which it was, to now spreading across the country, is opening up innovation like nobody's ever seen. And we are just at the very beginning of this tsunami of innovation and productivity gains. Like, this is going to be like written about.
I just hope the system can handle it. Like, I just hope it doesn't break the system like completely to the point where there's like fucking
no one benefits. No one benefits from.
Yeah, I know, but some people like fucking elite. Putin and shit. They're gonna die anyway. They're like, fuck it, man. What I mean, I'm not saying Putin's wrong or right. I don't know about all that shit. But I'm saying there's guys that are old that have old money and they're like, fuck it. Like, this is our last.
That's what I talk about with Richard, man. I'm waiting for Richard's midlife crisis. I want Richard to turn 50 and buy a submarine.
Richard's actually 133 years old.
And go to like streams under the ocean. He's because he's single, he's very wealthy, he's successful, he's retired. I'm just waiting for him to, feel that mortality coming down the bend, and he's like, I gotta buy a fucking supercar again.
I've had 10
what is he gonna do?
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh yeah, a little bit of it.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull him up. Sam, tell me if I look like this guy.
And I'm gonna do a little bit of a show here because I gotta actually get off in a second after you pull that up. But I gotta actually get some other work done. This has been awesome, Orga. This has been super helpful for me. Appreciate the information you're sharing. And I didn't even realize that you had a YouTube channel. I know you were talking about stuff, but I honestly didn't.
Yeah, I don't put out a lot of content, man. I only put out content that interests me. Or like if I feel like there's something that people want to learn about, and I'm like, yeah, we need to get a little more clarity on this. But for the most part, I won't post, videos very often because I'm not as good at like the day-to-day stuff that you guys are doing. I love watching the show and tuning into the show, so that's a ton of fun for me. If I ever feel like I have a little something to share, I love coming on and doing it with you guys live.
This is dope.
Stuff. I can put that together for evergreen content, but I also love getting on here and just hashing it out. We think things through on the fly. It's fun.
Yeah,
if you ever love a section that we were talking about, we can always send you the clips of it if you just want to post something like different.
Definitely.
But,
definitely.
It's nice having like a little clip with just a thumbnail where you're like, I didn't have to do much, but it was a great clip. Guys, real quick, I have a clips channel and I have a lot of stuff to do on it, and I am a bad boy and I need to keep editing videos. I'm a bad boy. But not editing videos, but literally just titling them and pressing publish because bullish is dope. But yeah, guys, that's the Clips channel. If you're in this chat right now, I want you to follow that thing. It's got like 60 subs, 70 subs. I want 100 subs. Okay.
Nice.
Okay. I want 100 subs, and I'm going to drop like 6, 7 fire roasted clips straight today. Like literally, I'm dropping like 7 clips straight today. Once I get back from the gym, I'm going to hit it hard. There was this cutie at the gym yesterday, not going to lie, and she got me a little spruced up. Not spruced up like that, just like in my brain. There's a little
spruce popping up or something.
Yeah, like, it's been a while since I'd gone on a date or nothing because I've just been working constantly, and I just shut that part of my brain off when I'm working. I don't even turn it on. Like it no longer exists. Like I don't want to look at anything on my phone. I don't want to look
you just gotta onboard more women. I'm always having a blast on board, and I've learned the secret is.
Well, that's why Richard, he's always surprising me with his lust for women. I'm like, dude, I cannot believe you're not over that shit. Them bitches are annoying as hell.
Yeah, well, he grew up a nerd, man, a hardworking.
That's what I'm saying. See, that's why we're girls,
man.
I was like dating girls like casually when I was like 17 and like doing drugs and shit. It was like really weird. It's like my life was just kind of like ass backwards in that way.
I bet it's difficult to pull tail up in an attic when you can't see anything and you're covered in fucking insulation.
VRC is going to the gym a little sprucey. Oh, I'm gonna get a nice black sweatshirt that says a little sprucey.
I used to get jobs specifically just because I was like, oh, there's girls that go into that job. Like I used to work at Guess, the clothing store, because I knew that a lot of girls went in there just literally to meet more girls.
Man. I'm not talking any crap about women. I'm only talking crap about westernized young women that are around me that are annoying. But any other woman in this chat is amazing, could never do anything wrong. I'll give a present to every woman in this chat because you're so amazing. And literally, if you're a girl in this chat and you leave, like you're leaving behind a legacy because we got like 3 girls and you're like 30% of the army. Legacy. So guys, we're gonna be changing stuff around here. I'm starting to double down my efforts on IG a little bit. That's like I kind of went on Facebook for like a week and a half, kind of felt it out a little bit. Now I'm doubling back down on IG, feeling it out a little bit. I followed like 400 people, kind of started commenting on shit, postings. So guys, check me out on everything. I want you to follow that Clips channel. I want you to follow Orca. I want you to follow Sam. I want you to buy all of our stuff until you're broke, and we get all the T-shares. And we get all this money. We get this money, printers, because that's the only reason I'm here is so down the line I can get your money. Okay, I can get it.
At least he's honest about it.
If you guys want to follow my shit, I'm gonna do a couple of videos today. Actually, that's the intention about some of the.
Oh, you are. I'm gonna do more.
About. Yeah, you gotta catch up. You gotta catch up, bro. You gotta catch up.
Dude, when Sam wakes up, he's got 3 videos out, and I just smash my desk like this. I'm like, I gotta wake up earlier. It's like
you can't keep getting away with this.
So I'm currently winning on YouTube 6,000 versus 1,000, but I need to catch up on Twitter. So if you guys want to help me catch up to Orca, who's just destroying me, or GRC, you guys can check. Yes, you can check the link down below for my Twitter.
Look at this ratio. Look at this parabolic ratio. I gotta say, let's say these numbers out loud. These might be all-time high hexagon numbers. I might throw that out there that these are all-time high. Join Twitter for the first time, April 2021. 4,600 subs.
Nah, it's killing you, man. I joined November.
I know, but I mean, I only just started.
Wait, you said April 2021?
Parabolic.
A year ago. It's a year ago.
Yes,
it was like this though. It was like this.
I've got to run. I appreciate both of you guys' time. This has been awesome. I appreciate everybody who's listening in too, and hope you guys create an awesome rest of your day. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks, guys.
Yep, we're dipping too, guys. Have a great day. It's Crypto in the Morning. I'm gonna be sprinkling in some 6 p.m.ers with some prime like yesterday. I know you guys liked that Kareem V2 drop last night. That was awesome. I think we all know that. I had a great time. Sam had a great time, and the viewers loved it. Guys, it's Crypto in the Morning. Check us out. I have never missed a show in my life, in my career, okay?
Wow, commitment.
Boom.